Well, let me introduce the 6 candidates running for Group 5 who will now join me on the dais in alphabetical order. Mr. Ariel Fernandez. Yes, we can applaud. Mr. Jackson Rip Holmes. Mr. Philip P.J. Mitchell. Miss Sandra Murato, now you can come up. She wanted to come up earlier. Mr. Norman Anthony Newell. And last but not least, Mrs. Jeanette Slesnick. Ladies and gentlemen, the members of the Chamber and of the Business and Government Affairs Committee, as well as members of the community, were asked and tasked with putting together the questions for this evening's event. All candidates were sent correspondence dealing with the format for tonight's event, but none of them were given the questions in advance. Also, in order to maintain the timeliness and proper decorum of the evening, I'd like to once again set some ground rules so that we have a smooth dialogue, so that all our candidates can do a fine job this evening. In fact, they've all agreed to the terms and conditions. Insulting remarks, heckling, verbal outbursts will not be tolerated. Anybody who does that will be asked to leave. Signs, placards, banners, campaign materials are also not allowed inside the field house. All the candidates received a table outside where they could display their campaign materials. Please also hold your applause until all the candidates have concluded their remarks and not during their remarks in tonight's program. I thank you for your cooperation, and I really hope that we have a great and informative evening. The program is going to be divided into 3 parts, with the commission candidates in Group 5 up first, followed by Group 4, then a very short break, and then the mayoral forum. During each session, the first portion will focus on prepared questions, and time permitting, we'll take a few questions from the audience and questions that have been submitted online. In fact, you'll see that you have 3x5 index cards located at every seat. Feel free to submit a question to a candidate or to the entire group. Please write the questions clearly and submit them to one of the Chamber staff members or volunteers in the room. The program will be conducted in the following manner. I'll introduce all the candidates in the group in alphabetical order, as I just did with our first group. Each commission candidate will then be given 1 minute to make opening remarks. Each candidate in reverse order will also have 1 minute of closing remarks at the end of our program. Also, responses to questions posed to the commission candidates will be limited to 1 minute as well. Candidates are asked not to address each other during this format, to speak to the audience, but certainly not to engage in any debate. Our timekeeper is Mark Trowbridge, who does a great job doing that, the president of the Chamber, who's sitting right up front. Mark will give everybody on the panel signals at the 30, 15, 10, and 5-second mark, and at the 0, a bell will ring. Does everything sound good to you? Candidates ready? All righty, let's begin. Opening statements for our first panel will begin with Mr. Ariel Fernandez. Mr. Fernandez, you have 1 minute for opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Juan, and thank you all for being here this evening. I know our schedules are always very busy, and it's great to see this participation in this room today. My name is Ariel Fernandez. 5 years ago, my beautiful wife, Monica, and I had the opportunity to buy our starter home here in the city of Coral Gables. When we moved into the city, we immediately fell in love with the community that we were moving into. Coral Gables isn't just a city, it's a community. Everybody looks after each other. In our block alone, my neighbors mow my lawn for me because they know I'm campaigning. They're always looking after our house and checking in on my wife when she's home. So it's something that we really appreciate. I'm running today because neighbors in our community have told me about a lot of issues that are affecting them. Issues such as crime, issues like overdevelopment. And for those issues, I am running. I'm a candidate in this election, and I hope to tell you more about myself tonight and give you an opportunity to speak to me.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fernandez. Now, Mr. Holmes.
Hi, I want to thank the Coral Gables Chamber for having this wonderful forum. I know it's not easy. I thank the University of Miami, and I thank each and every one of you for coming out and making Coral Gables the great city that it is. You all do make a difference. Segue into what I'm about to say with the difference that the voters made in 2001. I was very surprised, but I hope you do it again. The voters said, we're not liking the way the city is going, and they voted out 3 commissioners and the mayor, and change the direction of the city to make it more residential. My biggest concern as a Miracle Mile property owner is happening again. Miracle Mile is about to go into 15-story buildings. The only way for us to prevent that is to redo the parking redevelopment to include a department store that anchors low-rise suburban Coral Gables. Don't we all want a suburb rather than a downtown Miami? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Holmes. Now, Mr. Mitchell.
Good evening, everyone. I too want to thank the University of Miami and all of our co-sponsors. And in our previous debate, I wanted to wish each candidate good luck, but not that much luck tonight. So that said, as a son of a small-town physician, I was raised with a deep passion for public service. Approximately 15 years ago, I started my professional career at the Miami-Dade Public Defender's Office. And today, in my own private practice, I serve as a volunteer attorney ad litem for children in need. I've also spearheaded a 5K charity run here in Coral Gables. I've also sat on the Coral Gables Economic Development Board and the Government Affairs Committee for the Chamber. My commitment to you is to preserve our high quality of life in our great city. I will do that by being accessible and listening to the ideas and the concerns of all of the residents. Together, we can work to bring a brighter future for our great city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Ms. Morato.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to thank the Coral Gables Chamber of Commerce. I'd like to thank the University of Miami. I'd like to thank the Myra Jolie law firm, as well as the Coral Gables Bar Association, all of you present here today. My name is Sandra Morato. I'm a Coral Gables resident for the last 12 years. This is where I live. This is where my 2 children go to school. This is where they play. This is where they're growing up. This is where they benefit from our beautiful open spaces, our parks, our youth center. This is where I work. This is where I have my immigration law practice in downtown Coral Gables. So this is where I live. This is where I work. This is where my children go to school. I don't have any conflicts of interest. I have no special interests. I want to convey that I'm a fully independent, self-made person. I'm willing to work with all of you that are committed to improving our city's services, police protection, and quality of life of our city beautiful. And I thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you very much, Ms. Morato. And now, Mr. Newell.
I don't want to waste your time, so let's clear the air. Every time they say they don't have a conflict, they're implying that I do. Okay? Not only is that untrue, I think it's unwise. I've sent more mail out to all of you, more than anyone on this panel, and not one word, not one drop of ink was devoted to my opponents. Now, I could have sent mail out tying Ariel Fernandez to David Rivera, which would sink his campaign. I could take an ad out in the Herald that says, who is Sandra Morato and what kind of self-described activist isn't quite active enough to serve one single day on one city board. And with Jeanette, I can say, wow, you want to give someone the power to reshape property in the morning so she can sell it at night? I can get nasty too, because that's what they've been doing. I prefer not to. I like to run on ideas and not insults. No, really. I like to run on ideas and not insults, okay? I don't want to make their lives miserable. I want to make our lives better. So with that out of the way, I want to have a good debate. Thank you.
Well, I guess it's out of his system. Very good. And last but not least, Mrs. Slesnick, you have the floor.
Hi, I'm Jeanette Slesnick, and I just want to give you 4 points in my platform since we are limited to 1 minute. One, I'm very concerned about public safety in Coral Gables. It was the #1 issue, and it still should be, because it's very important that our government really addresses public safety, and we're going to be doing that soon. 2 is development. Development is fine, but we need to make sure that it's controlled, and it's also that it's smart development, and that's what I'm most concerned with. 3 is education. Public education is extremely important in maintaining the right environment in a city, and we need to make sure that all of our students have the opportunity to go wherever they wanted to go and whatever school zones they want to be in. And last but not least is to inform our citizens better than we have been in the past, and making them very aware, I would like to return their phone calls and emails and everything else to be responsive, and I want a responsive city government. Thank you.
Well, that concludes the opening remarks. Now we're going to get to the fun part, to the questions and the substance. You know, there's many issues facing the city of Coral Gables right now, from development to taxation to street lighting, parking, and other infrastructure matters, police and crime prevention, major corporate relocations, and much, much more. Let's go back to Mr. Fernandez. What do you believe are the most important issues that we're facing, and how do you believe you're qualified to address them?
I think the two largest issues that we have in the city of Coral Gables right now are crime and safety and development. Those are the two largest issues that I have been told by residents. I've been talking to residents about issues for the last couple of years, visiting homes in the North Gables area beginning April of last year. I was able to speak to over 1,000 residents last year, and those are the issues that were brought to my attention. Those are the issues that made me decide to run for this position. What makes me best qualified for this job? I think I agree with what Ms. Morato said before. I'm also somebody who has no ties here in the city of Coral Gables. I have no business interests in the city. I have no ties to developers. I have no ties to anybody other than the residents. The issues that I'm raising in this campaign are issues that have been brought to my attention by residents, not by anybody else. I'm not on the tap for anybody else, and you know, I take offense to the comments made by Mr. Newell in violation of the rules of this debate. But the fact is, I do not have any ties that would affect my ability to do my job as Commissioner in the City of Coral Gables.
Thank you, Mr. Fernandez. Mr. Holmes, same question.
Thank you very much. As many of you were at the earlier debate on Ponce and the Ponce Business Association over at the church and Congregational Church. I think that the three issues that matter most to residents, to voters, and to me are police, fire, trash pickup. And if you do me the honor and the city voters do me the honor of electing me, those will be my priorities. As you know, I'm also concerned about preserving the residential charm and character of Coral Gables.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. Mr. Mitchell, same question.
Yes, I have previously stated on the record that our community is facing some important issues, especially within the next 24 to 36 months, particularly the issue of overdevelopment. And I too agree that crime and security is a big issue. However, I do want to say in terms of development, I am not against development. I am for smart, balanced development. But there is one particular project that does concern me, and that's the Mediterranean Village project, for several reasons. It has 1.3 million square feet alone. That's bigger than the village of Merrick Park, which in and of itself was up for a referendum back in the early 2000s. The other issue that I have is it's more than 600 parking spaces that will not be available, and we already have a parking issue downtown. And the third issue, of course, is that just the pure size and manner and what it may actually do to downtown concerns me, to all of our downtown merchants regarding our businesses.
Thank you very much. Ms. Morato.
Thank you. The 2 points that I would raise after walking more than 1,000, probably close to 2,000 homes in the less than 3 months would be police protection and development. And if you go further south, the issue is the unfunded liability, where we owe approximately $243 million. I would tackle those issues. Those issues are familiar to me. I've been involved with the pension reform since the 2011, notifying our residents, emailing them, going to public hearings, attending commission meetings, and informing the public with respect to this unfunded liability that was accumulated over the time of 2000 to 2010. And for the record, I would like to point out to my esteemed opponent, Mr. Newell, that I did serve on the Parks and Recreation Board from 2011 to 2013.
Mr. Newell, you're up again.
The two
Same
issues
question.
for me are your whole basket of quality of life issues, which we've talked about at length, and crime is included in that, as well as traffic. The other issue is pensions, and pensions is a budgetary issue. You have to tie the two together. In this city, everything you do, I think, is traced back to a budgetary issue. It's a fiscal matter. We're short on police. That's why crime spiked to the extent that it did, even though crime is today lower than it was in 2001, 2002, and 2003. With pensions, we're bleeding about $26 million a year. We're putting $26 million into our pension plan to pay off an unfunded liability of $250 million. 23 of the $26 million is for that liability, 3 is for benefits. That is a parasite. And if you think that doesn't affect quality of life or pensions or anything, or your budget or anything else, then I think you're mistaken. So for me, quality of life, pensions, but more broadly, your entire budgetary structure. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mrs. Selesnik.
As I mentioned at the beginning, public safety is the #1 issue in maintaining a quality environment in our city. Having enough police on the force, having police patrolling and enforcing the existing regulations and rules and speed, and having speed traps and so forth to slow down traffic in residential neighborhoods. I'm a residential realtor, and our quality of life in our neighborhoods is what makes Coral Gables great. I'm proud to say I have the endorsement of the Fraternal Order of the Police and the International Firefighters Association. I respect our employees in the city, and they in turn respect me, I hope, and I intend to really promote public safety to keep the values of our homes and our properties in Coral Gables as high as we can make them.
Well, it seemed like police and crime was a common thread throughout this day. So let's go back to the beginning and talk about the police department. Tell me about your thoughts regarding the leadership at the police department as it stands now. Yes, sir.
I think the police department is in great hands with Chief Ed Hudak at the helm. I had a meeting with Kathy Swanson, our city manager, about 5 weeks ago. I was the first candidate to meet with her. And the first thing that I asked her was, when are you going to make Ed Hudak the permanent chief of the police department? And I know she has a plan in place in adding an assistant city manager for public safety. That's a position that she has created, and she has decided to put it in place so that we can address the issues of crime and safety, the issues with our fire department, and many issues that are affecting our city. I think with Ed Hudak and Kathy Swanson, we're definitely heading in the right direction. We definitely need to fill those vacancies in the police department. I think we need to add lighting in our residential streets. There are definitely things we can do to help our police department. I took the liberty of doing a ride-along with the police a few weekends ago, and I saw what our police officers do on a daily basis, and there are definitely a few things we can do to improve their jobs.
Thank you, Mr. Fernandez. Mr. Holmes, the same question.
Thank you. I really welcome the opportunity to answer the question, and I think that these public forums do educate, as you all at the University of Miami seek to facilitate tonight. You're succeeding. One of the things that came out in the last forum, I have to tip my hand to Ms. Selesnik, who pointed out that prior city manager was helping balance the budget by not filling police positions. And I would submit to you that if I'm elected, I'll do my best to end that. We don't want to sacrifice public safety. I don't think that's expendable. Other items of the budget, yes, are expendable. Low taxes, absolutely low taxes. We're not out of the recession. But one way to improve public safety, I believe, is to fill those positions that are already budgeted. We already got the money set aside, but we're not hiring the people.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mitchell?
Yes, a few thoughts. First of all, the whole purpose of a municipality is to provide services to the people, right? And what are those services? Fire and police. Right now, as previously been stated, we've got 25 patrol police officers. There are, well, it's in the budget for additional officers. I, too, agree that we must fill those slots, and we must fill those slots with people that are qualified. And in addition to that, we also need to have more frequency of the patrols within our neighborhoods. There was a time in Coral Gables when the police officers would patrol every 2 or 3 hours within the core of the city. And that's not happening at this point. So we need to take a look at that. We also need to take a look at the number of zones that they're currently using here in the city. I think we should increase that as well.
Thank you very much. Ms. Murado?
Thank you. Interim Chief Ed Hudak is doing a fabulous job. I have a great deal of respect for someone that works for one police force for 27 years and goes up the ranks with his colleagues, and you get a lot of respect when that happens. So based on that, I think that he is very well qualified. I don't know who else would better understand the needs of our city as far as police protection. I do agree with his policy of dividing the city into 12 zones, which is currently what he has in place, and assigning 2 patrol per zone, and trying to have the neighbors become familiar with who the 2 officers are that are assigned. With respect to that, I am in agreement that patrolling deters crime. And so I believe in an increased presence of patrolling in commercial as well as residential areas to give residents this semblance of security.
Thank you very much, Mr. Newell.
Yeah, I think Chief Hudak is great. I think we all agree on that. We all agree that we need to fill the vacancies. We all agree we need better lighting. I think Commissioner Lago has actually championed that issue, and he started that 2 years ago. You know, about the patrol, what we have here in the Gables is not endemic crime. It's not someone waking up on Madrid and running over to Lisbon and ripping someone off. We're having people come from outside the city, rip us off and leave. And so when we had these large undercover units going around, although it sounds great to have them and you feel safe, they're really not doing much to deter. And Chief Hudak has also, I think, refocused us on marked patrol. So I agree with that. I also want to stress the importance of community involvement in crime fighting. I have introduced to the city, I've met with the city manager and the police chief, a Crime Watch app that I think will get younger people involved in Crime Watch. I go to the Crime Watch master meeting the first Friday of the month, and I'm the youngest person by about 35 years, and I think we can change that by using today's technology to fight crime. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Slesnick.
I agree with everyone up here, and we've discussed it already, but higher visibility by a police force in our neighborhoods would really deter crime. Not stop it, that's impossible, but at least slow it down. And I also would like to have our street traffic speeding zones enforced so that children and pets and senior citizens walking on our sidewalks and across our streets are protected. We have strong laws on the books, and we need to enforce them. And we need to enforce them by having a full complement of police on the force.
Thank you. We're going to stagger our questions now, and I'm actually going to throw some of the questions out for the candidates to answer. Some of you brought up the pension issue earlier. On one side, being a public employee, I understand the importance of a pension, but from the taxpayer perspective, there are concerns about cost containment and potentially taxes. Tell us about the pension program in the Gables and any plans for changing that program. Whoever would like to jump in. I heard a few of you say that.
I'll say it. Pension program is important, and we have to have an attractive one, but it doesn't do you any good if you can't fund it and if it's bankrupting the city. I think the most important reforms, let's say the hardest reforms, have been taken up by the current administration. I'd still like to see some changes be made. I'd like to see the assumption rate, the discount rate lowered. Right now, we're sort of kidding ourselves. We put money into a fund. We expect to get about 7.75% return. We don't, and then we're underfunded. I'd also like to see new employees, maybe not life safety, but new general employees, given the option, at least to start, of having a 401k instead of a defined benefit plan. I think if people were to have a 401k available to them, the ones who would use it would enjoy it. I think they'd realize that it's actually a pretty good plan. We offer one for our employees in our business and my family business. We have a safe harbor feature in it. We can offer that as well. And then eventually we can move away from the defined benefit, which I think is the best thing we could do for our pensions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Newell. Anybody else wish to weigh in on this topic? Mr. Holmes.
Yeah, the pensions are one of our very biggest problems, and we're not alone. You know, we see this is happening at the counties, happening across the state, it's happening across the country. So it's a very difficult place because you've got all of the people that are making the city run, the city employees, especially our friends at the police department. They want these pensions, they need these pensions, they're very concerned about them, but yet I personally believe it's not fair to the rest of us that, for instance, this retirement plan that our city employees have protects them from the recession. They get a guaranteed income on their retirement that no one else gets on their retirement plan. Come recession, depression, or what have you, defined pension. I think that we should remodel it after the state retirement pension. Why should the city get a better retirement than the state workers? Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to chime in if I may. When the city revenue during the boom years in the mid-2000 was on the uprise, we did not have the vision to let the unfunded liability escape out of our hands. Like they say, a Porsche can go 0 to 60 in 5 seconds. Well, we went from 0 to 243 million in 10 years. And that's irresponsible. And that's not how you run a home, a business, or a government. With the increase in revenues, with the projects that are coming, whether you agree with them or not, they're in the pipeline. I believe that monies should be set aside responsibly, looking at our budget and paying down that $243 million unfunded liability. That is not erased from the books. That must be paid. That is your debt. That is my debt. That is my children's debt.
Thank you. Anybody else on the dais wish to weigh in on the issue of pension?
I would. I agree. I think we're in a situation where I went to the last retirement board meeting. We're at 62% funded. Most municipalities that are at our rating are about 80%. That's a big difference. Going forward, I think one of our priorities must be to review our city's budget. When was the last time we actually took time to review the budget? You go watch a commission meeting that's focused on the budget, and it's basically a rubber stamp approving the budget. Nothing ever gets reviewed. We need to sit down, review the budget. For many years, we were actually paying for snacks for some of our departments. Why are we as residents responsible for paying for people's snacks? These are things we cannot do. I've actually taken the time to sit down with a municipal budget expert, and we've reviewed the budget. And I'll tell you, there are a lot of things in there that would surprise you. If you have the time, sit down, go over that budget, and you'll be surprised by a lot of things you'll find in there. I think if we review the budget, we can definitely start bringing down our debt and ensuring that our future of our city is going to be strong.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fernandez.
Sure, let me just add a few comments here. I believe everyone on the panel has spoken to them, but I do want to talk about for one moment about this is where we're at, so we're going to have to make some decisions. And those decisions are we have to keep economic vitality. That means we have to work with the fire and the police. We have to move to a point where as a city we continue to grow ourselves out of this. This is not going to be resolved overnight. This is going to take time. This is just like a business. When you run a business, you have to make certain hard decisions. So we can do that. But I also want to say that we have some great people working for us at the fire, the police, and the general employees. And we need those services. They need these jobs. And we need to work together to resolve these issues. And the last comment I do want to have in regards to this pension issue, and I've said it before in previous debates, is that all new employees have to move to a defined contribution plan. They cannot be part of any pension plan. The pension plans do not work in the private sector, and they do not work in the government sector.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Anyone else on this issue? Let's jump to another hot-button issue that several of you raised, and that's the Mediterranean Village project. Certainly in a city like Coral Gables, you have to balance economic development with preservation. I'd like to throw out the question on your thoughts on this project, the scale, if it's appropriate, et cetera. Yes, sir, Mr. Holmes.
A lot of you already know I have property on Miracle Mile, and so I'm in favor generally of Mediterranean Village. I like to see more people shopping in the Coral Gables downtown. And a couple of experts have said I should make a pitch to Mediterranean Village to bring the department stores that are number one on my agenda, department store, because department store keeps a low-rise thing. If people are coming, spending a lot of money shopping because there's department stores they know where they can find, that helps you pay lower taxes, but it also keeps the skyline low. So we keep the suburban nature of our city. Mediterranean Village, from my point of view, is a good thing.
Thank you.
I would like to answer. I'm very concerned about Mediterranean Village, and from what I've heard from many residents, most of you are as well. It's a project that is very large in size. It is encroaching into our residential neighborhoods. It's in direct competition with Miracle Mile. It's going to have 314,000 square feet of retail space. We're spending $20 million on Miracle Mile, yet we're going to approve a project that's going to be a direct competition to the people who have been in Miracle Mile for over 40 or 50 years. We need to take care of the people who are part of this community. For too long, we've been very supportive of developers and them coming in and doing whatever they want in our city. The rubber stamp has to stop. We need to start looking at what direction we want for our city. Do we want Coral Gables to be the next Brickell, or do we want to preserve the charm Coral Gables has had for 90 years?
I want to say something. Ariel's just made the same argument they made against Merrick Village, the mall, which is actually working pretty well. You know, it's not binary, ma'am. It's not binary, okay? It's not where you either get the Agave project or you don't, okay? Because here's what you can have if Agave were to sell that land. The way it's zoned, actually the way it was rezoned during the Slesnick era, you could put 1 million square feet of pure commercial there by rights, and the commission wouldn't be able to stop it, not one bit. Now, you can take a look at the 1.3 some odd million square feet of mixed use, and you can compare that to 1 million square feet of pure commercial, and you tell me which one you'd prefer. So I think if we're going to talk about Mediterranean Village, and it's hard to do it in 60 seconds, I think we need to talk about it responsibly. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Selesnik.
I'd like to address the Agave Mediterranean Village. The Agave group is smart, intelligent. They build beautiful buildings, and they're not going to put something there that is going to be closed up and boarded up in a few years. They know what they're doing. However, there need to be some reassurances from the city in overseeing some of the questions and permission and height extensions that they're looking for. We need to have smart growth and people from City Hall that will at least pay attention to the different variances and all the other projects. This is not it's a spot development. It's not under the master plan. And in last Sunday's paper, our former mayor, Mayor Raul Valdez-Foley, stated, the city's master plan and strict zoning regulations were created to control development in the downtown area. These are not, we have a master plan and it's not being followed in the Agave project. So I think if we lived up under our master plan, you would see a different scenario there.
Ms. Murata.
I'd like to chime in as well. At this point, I'd like to inform the residents, and for those of you that may not know, we had the Building and Zoning Department in February unanimously passed the project, 7-0. On March 24th, it went before the commission. On March 25th, there was a 3-hour public hearing held from 1 to 4 p.m. The public hearing was closed. On April 2nd, this Thursday, those of you wishing to attend may go to City Hall and listen to the commissioners because they are going to have the first reading on this project. It will either die or it will pass. And if it passes, it goes to the state. It will take 60 to 90 days to be evaluated, and it will come before one of the 6 of us sitting before you, because that will happen in July or August. And at that point, if I were your elected official, I would evaluate it on a second reading.
Thank you.
I have just a few words. I previously stated what some of my concerns were. But I was at that meeting the other day at City Hall when there was a public hearing. And I don't know how many others were there, but I can tell you, whenever they showed the animation of the project to scale, it showed everything. You realized at that moment that the project was too big. They've eliminated the buffer zone. There's no way that we're going to have adequate parking there. The height restriction is blown by about 3 stories. It's true, it's a beautiful project, but we have a lot of concerns. And I'm telling you, my proposal would be to go back and tell the Agave Group to pare it down. And Mr. Newell is correct, and as of right, they could build 1 million square feet, which would be comparable to the Village of Merrick Park. I would submit to you as residents that this is a project that you need to keep an eye on, that you need to attend you need to attend the commission meeting on April 2nd, and you need to tell your commissioners and you need to tell your mayor what you really think about the project. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mitchell. You know, an observation, I've seen a disparity in the amount of money raised in this campaign. And my question to throw out to the dais is, if money or substance wins these races?
I think we have a very smart electorate in the city of Coral Gables, and I trust the people of Coral Gables to make a smart decision. I think we've all done a pretty good job of explaining who we are and telling voters where we stand on most of the issues, on all the important issues that are affecting the city of Coral Gables. It's really unfortunate that in Coral Gables we don't have a runoff system, because from the way it looks, we'll probably have a minority electing your next commissioner. I think that's something maybe we should contemplate for the future. But as far as where we stand today, again, I trust the electorate. I don't think money buys or wins elections. I think personal contact, talking to voters, meeting voters, and addressing the concerns they have, that should be the priority of your next commissioner, and that's what I intend to do.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll address that issue. I don't think it's either. I think it's name ID. I mean, of course, it takes money to get name ID, and it also takes time. But let's talk about something else. I think you've got 6 candidates up here that really do care, and I think we've got a group of people in this room that really do care. And I think at the end of the day, and maybe I'm just a dreamist of some sort, but I do believe that the people will make the right decision. I believe that in my heart. But I do think it's important that when you do go to the ballot box, that you sit there and you look at each candidate in its totality. And I can tell you that each and every single time that I make my decision, I look at someone's past, and their past usually will predict the future. So that's what I would submit to you. Evaluate each and every candidate and make the best decision that you can. And when you have a union between your heart and your mind, you'll know that you've made the right decision.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell.
Well, in light of somebody who hasn't given herself a loan and has gone door to door and requested monies from residents and friends and family, each person has a right to raise the money or make a loan or secure it any way that they can legally. At the end of the day, my personal philosophy is to make a connection with people. Eye to eye, you look, you trust, you look at their history, you look at their actions. You don't look at what people say, you look at what people do. And for those of you that know me, you know I mean what I say, and I say what I mean. And what I say, you can believe. And so when I knock on doors, I look at people eye to eye, and I make it my point to walk. In fact, I've walked over 1,600 homes, and it's been my pleasure to do so. And my message, for those of you who know me and spread the word, know that I will be a person with integrity, high moral ethical standards, transparency, and I will speak for you, the resident of Coral Gables.
Thank you.
I think the conventional wisdom is that money corrupts, and that's what people, I think, take with them when they address this issue. Money is support. No one here is buying watches with their money or buying new cars or buying new jackets. It's how we communicate with you. Everyone here is trying to raise as much money as possible, trust me. Everyone here wants as much as they can get. And I'll tell you what's more valuable than money in terms of support. It's having the support or the endorsement of someone who's earned the goodwill of this city. Okay? People like former Mayor Dorothy Thompson, former Mayor George Corrigan, former Commissioner Chip Withers, Commissioners Lago and Quesada, and a whole host of stakeholders in this city who have done a lot for this city, more than I have. They're behind me. And so I think if the argument is that money corrupts and me receiving money is a bad influence, then what about that support, which is a lot more valuable than a $1,000 check or 10 of them?
Thank you, Mr. Knoll. Anybody else?
I don't think it really makes a difference how much money you raise in a campaign, because it isn't always the person that raises the most that wins the election. I do think name recognition makes a big difference, and I believe I've had a lot of name recognition in our community because I've lived and worked here for 30 plus years and been involved in so many different city boards, nonprofit organizations, nonprofits, fundraising efforts, and so forth. And I've been here and been involved in the school system and everything else in town with my children and now my grandchildren. I've lived and worked in Coral Gables, and I love my town, and I give of myself freely, and I really hope that the public appreciates all the toiling that I've done for all these nonprofits and our city also over the last 30 years.
Thank you. Mr. Holmes, care to join in on that conversation?
Well, I've been credited by no less than Miss Madonna of the Miami Herald with having a good sense of humor. So this is my opportunity tonight. Guess who's raised the least amount of money of the 6 candidates? So I'm listening very intently, and anybody wants to contribute to my campaign,
That's great. Let's switch now to some of the questions from the stakeholders, and one of the biggest issues that has come up is traffic, not only along US 1, but in other parts of the city. People are also talking about the use of mass transit, the trolleys, even bike safety and usage of bikes in the city beautiful. Let's begin with Mr. Fernandez on the topic of traffic.
It is one of the largest issues that's been brought up to my attention by residents, and it's a safety issue as well. I've been canvassing since last year. When I was canvassing Obispo last year, I almost got run over twice trying to cross Obispo during rush hour. During rush hour, if you're on Obispo, you'll know it's almost like crossing I-95. People were driving down there. I had one resident who told me they clocked somebody doing 90 right before they got to Granada. That's a cause for concern. Traffic circles have been added. They still haven't done much. We need to start looking into other possible solutions to our traffic issue. We recently had a traffic meeting for the streets just south of Bird Road. Those residents requested a meeting 25 years ago. The city just granted them that meeting. We can't continue working like this. We need to address the issues before we have an unfortunate accident. We need to address the issue now. We have a great opportunity of speaking with other cities in the League of Cities, which the city is a part of, and see what has worked in other municipalities similar to the city of Coral Gables. Let's use the resources that are at our fingertips.
Thank you.
Yes, I think I haven't kept up specifically with the news, but we all read about bike accident, I believe, at Granada and Bird Road. And I have 2 or 3 second jobs beyond real estate, one of which is as an Uber driver. I spend a lot of time on the road, and so it hurts me beyond belief to see some of the things that happen. We in Coral Gables, you know, we have the Plummer and Associates business firm. They've done the traffic circles. You may see that along Red Road, there's a lot of streets that have actually been closed. That's a pretty good idea when you think about it. We go back to Mayor Valdez-Fowley. He says that we're plunk in the middle of the county and we're a big transit spot. People come east in the morning, west in the evening. How do we stop them from running over our animals? We need to do more work. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Mitchell.
Yes. In terms of the bikers and the cyclists, it is tragic what happened the last few days, the last week. However, that should move us to a point where maybe we should go ahead and, with our police, we need to enforce the statutes. We need to enforce the ordinances. And in terms of the cyclists and the drivers, we have to look out for each other. Look, we are a very active community. You get up any Saturday, any Sunday, You're going to see bicyclists, runners all over the community. So we have to look out for each other, but we also have to enforce the law.
The issue of traffic is huge, and I understand Obispo. I have great friends that live on that street and know that because it transverses all the way to 57th Avenue, it's a speedway. Well, I live on 1503 Granada Boulevard, and I'm fully aware of that because I think people think that's 836, and then it blocks for about 3 blocks when you're getting to 8th Street. So I understand. When George Merrick founded this beautiful city, the streets were narrow. They're not as wide as we have them now. People will speed with the ease in which you allow them. If the streets were more narrow, perhaps people would drive more carefully because there's more to lose. If the roundabouts didn't have as much space as they would, maybe they wouldn't think they were Mario Andretti on a wide road and seeing how they can take that roundabout. It all boils down to a matter of respect. Do you respect your fellow residents, your neighbors, and where you're driving? And if you don't have that respect as a resident or a citizen, then perhaps we need to look at the size of our streets and those roundabouts and ways where we can ask the public or force them to go slower.
Thank you, Ms. Murata. Let's continue down.
Since
the business.
I'm doing a good job of being the buzzkill tonight, let me just say I don't think there's a whole lot you can do about traffic. You know, the county's growing at 4.5% around us. We are the cut-through city. So to me, it's about where do you place it. I think we would all prefer, okay, to have this cut-through traffic taken out of the residential areas and put on the main thoroughfares. And I think we can do that through enforcement and through traffic calming devices. Behavior is another issue, and Sandra alluded to it. I think narrowing the streets is the wrong approach. I think that's backward. But I have proposed a local ordinance that would crack down on texting and driving. There's a state law in effect, but it's a secondary offense, like wearing your seatbelt. They have to stop you first, and then they can get you. 1.6 million car accidents a year are caused by texting and driving. 9 people a day die from texting and driving. It takes 4.6 seconds to send the average text message, and you can travel a football field in that time, traveling an average speed. It is a huge issue in our city. I've almost been hit twice from a texter and driver, and I think that needs to be addressed specifically.
With the new development coming in downtown Coral Gables, we are not going to see less traffic. We're going to see more. That's a given. So we're going to have to get used to it, and we just hope that we appreciate that the drivers will be kinder and gentler as they pass through our city onto the west part of Coral Gables. I do think we need code enforcement and police enforcement of the speed limits. I live on North Greenway Drive, which is already a narrow street, and we have speeders down that street every afternoon, along with a massive amount of traffic heading from east to west. We have bikers and joggers and baby carriages, everything going up and down the street, and joggers actually in the street. We need to have more enforcement of our existing speed limits, and especially on the through streets of Coral Way, Lejeune, and so forth, where traffic is going through our city to reach other points.
Thank you. The Miami Herald recently had an in-depth article in Business Monday about all the corporate relocations and all the corporate headquarters in the city beautiful. It seems to be a city that attracts business. I'd like to hear each of your positions about economic development and attracting businesses while balancing it with quality of life. And let's begin. It looks like Mr. Newell wanted to speak first.
Sure. I've said this before. You've heard it, the head, heart, and soul model I have. I believe the city has a head, which is the government, a heart, which is the business sector, and the soul, which are the neighborhoods. The heart pumps the blood, it nourishes, and that's what our business sector does. You hear different stats, but it's usually somewhere in the neighborhood of 5% of our footprint pays for about 45% to 50% of our revenue. You know, we don't survive on taxes alone. We bring in about $87 million a year in taxes, $66 million a year on charges for services. You want to hire new police officers. You want to pay down $250 million unfunded liability. You have 90-something initiatives going, all these capital improvements. You need a thriving business sector in order to fund that. And so my thought is we have to be aggressive with it. And although it does, I think, merge with the development issue, I think that's something we need to look at with the master plan. People keep saying we have a master plan. Yeah, well, technically, nominally, we do. But a master plan needs a vision, and ours doesn't. And so with a city that is built on a vision, a city that is a planned city, we should have a master plan that has a vision as well.
Thank you. Ms. Lesnick?
I'm very proud of our city, and with all the new development going on, we're going to have lots and lots of space for all the international companies that are coming our way. And if you build it, they will come because they want the beautiful ambiance of Coral Gables to use as their headquarters here. I'm also very proud of our International Consular Corps, which is here in Coral Gables, not only the consulates that have their offices here, but the consulars that actually live in Coral Gables. It enhances the reputation of our city around the world. I think the more we have that reflects the quality of life here, the easier it is going to be to attract more international corporations and companies. But schooling is also very important. When these people move in, the heads of the corporations may not need the schools so much because they may send their kids to private school, but we need great public schools to bring in the rest of the crew.
Thank you. Mr. Fernandez?
I think schooling definitely is one way to attract new businesses. I think Coral Gables has been very successful for many years of attracting businesses to come into the city. I know my wife always laughs because whenever somebody tells me they're looking to move their company, the first thing I tell them is, you should move to Coral Gables. Why? Because that helps our city. We have a lot of vacant locations as well, and that's something that does concern me. If you walk down Miracle Mile, we have a lot of vacant locations on Miracle Mile, a lot of businesses that have had to shut down the last few years. We need to make it easier for these businesses to stay open. How do we do that? By maintaining our city. I think for too long we've been on this strategy of let's save money by not maintaining our city. That's why Miracle Mile looks the way it does, because we haven't taken the time to maintain it. Our residential sidewalks weren't maintained. Our street signs on the street corners haven't been maintained. We need to do a better job to maintain our city, make it look better. The businesses will come.
Mr. Holmes?
Thank you. I hope you'll probably agree with me that the Chamber of Commerce deserves credit for getting such an important question, which ultimately also equates to jobs, out here in this public forum. And it is, essential. Everyone ultimately is concerned about their job, and are we doing enough in the city leadership to make sure that there are jobs to be had for our residents, for our voters? And so, if you don't mind, I'm just going to mention a few people that I think deserve credit in addition to the host tonight, the Chamber of Commerce. The former development director, now our city manager, Kathy Swanson, the mayor, who's done a lot to bring in the internationals, the former city manager, Pat Salerno, all the people, especially our Chamber of Commerce, who worked so hard on this, our development committee, deserve our praise.
Thank you. Mr. Mitchell?
Yes, as I previously stated, I sat on the Coral Gables Economic Development Board for 2 years, and I came to certain conclusions. And I do believe that the city of Coral Gables needs to adopt a plan which is substantially similar to that of Miami-Dade County. Miami-Dade County has one community, one goal plan. And what it does is it focuses on certain strategic industries to bring to Miami-Dade County. Now, my proposal is that we adopt a variation of that, but I believe that we should focus on technology as our focus of bringing industry in. Technology is the future. It doubles every 24 months. I would like to see our community be renowned within the country for having some of the best tech industries and companies come to our great city.
Thank you. And Ms. Morato?
There's no one reason, or if someone asked you what made you fall in love with someone, I don't think there's one reason that you can say is one reason. So I don't think there's one reason why a company would relocate here, just like there's no one reason why you fell in love with this city and chose it to be your home. People come here, companies come here for a myriad of reasons. And at the end of the day, they want their employees, who may be possible residents, to be in an environment that's culturally advanced, that offers wonderful open spaces, a community that's thriving, And that's why people come here. That's why businesses come here. That's why consulates come here, because we offer what other cities don't offer.
You know, I have to ask this question. Two of you have now mentioned the consular corps. This is a question of the stakeholders, and this is a question that all of you have to answer. With the normalization of relations with Cuba, what is your position on a consulate in Coral Gables from Cuba? And let's begin on this end.
Wow. I didn't realize we were running for Congress. I think my answer is very simple. Until the Castro brothers are gone from Cuba and there is true change and true democracy in Cuba, I would not support having a consular office for Cuba in the city of Coral Gables. Then again, I guess it really wouldn't be a decision by the city of Coral Gables. That would be a decision by the Castro brothers. And with our current mayor, I highly doubt that they would come here to the city of Coral Gables. But the fact is, the Cuban people have suffered for many years. My grandparents are in this room. They suffered. They had to come to this country. And it really upsets me that somebody would say, let's normalize relations with a government that has been kicking people out of their country and destroying families. And I would not support them being in the city.
Thank you.
I'm with Ariel on that. All of us in our religion have different things that inspire us or depress us. But for me, the one miracle, well, there's two that I've seen in my life, but the biggest one, and if I cry, that's okay, because it was performed by Cuban Americans here in Miami. Everybody has their own religious beliefs, but I believe that to see what's happened since Cuban Americans came here, to see Miami become internationalized, to see us have all of these consulates, and I say no to a Castro consulate, it reminds me of my childhood in Gstaad, Switzerland. This is the greatest thing. And so Cuban Americans who live for the day when democracy returns to Cuba deserve to see that day without the Castro brothers or their government. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I didn't anticipate this question tonight, running for a municipal election, but this is what I will say.
Stakeholders were interested.
This is what I will say. I believe that the Cuban Americans have built Miami-Dade County. This is a great city. This is a great community. I love this place. I've been here for 15 years, and I'm happy. I wake up every day. I get to practice in a profession that I thought at one time in my life I'd never be able to practice in. I live in a great community. I live in a great city. And in relation to whether or not a consulate should be here, absolutely not. If not, but for one reason, out of respect for what has happened. And that's what I believe. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think there are two ways to answer this question. One is legal and one is emotional. I won't discuss the emotional because I think it's obvious to everyone. But legally speaking, that is a matter that will never come, as far as my knowledge is concerned, before a commission. The opening of an embassy, of a representative government in a country abroad, is determined between the relations of two countries. Cuba and the United States, prior to December 16th or 17th, did not recognize each other. And so we had to use the Swiss embassy in Cuba. So we have an intersection. At the end of the day, this is a decision that's made between the governments, and the first issue is where is the embassy going to be located. After an embassy is located in Washington, D.C., the issue of consulates is determined, and that's a matter that's taken up between the State Department and that local government.
Thank you. Mr. Newell?
If it were my issue, I'd say over my dead body. You don't reward despotic regimes, period, end of story. Until they can get their act together, until the Castros are gone, and that government can earn the goodwill of its people in this country and the Cuban Americans here, once again, over my dead body.
Thank you. And Mrs. Selesnik?
Emphatically no. It needs to be elsewhere.
You all are on the same page on that issue. You know, I think it's appropriate that we ask our final question about Town and Gown. We're at a wonderful facility in the University of Miami. You've all talked about the importance of education. How would you advance an education agenda in this city, both at the university and K through 12 level? Again, not necessarily an issue, as Mr. Fernandez pointed out, that is dictated at the municipal level, but certainly talk to us about education in Coral Gables, beginning with Mr. Fernandez.
Education has been a hot button issue the last few months, discussing our controlled choice program that's been affecting many families in the city of Coral Gables. It's really a cause for concern, where parents are waiting sometimes until the last minute to figure out or to know what school their children will be assigned to. And then they have to decide whether to send their children to that school or go through a charter school or go through a private school. That's not a decision that anybody should have to make. When you move into a city, you should know what schools your house is assigned to. When my wife and I bought our home, we thought we knew what school we were assigned to. It wasn't until one of our neighbor's child went to school that we found out we were part of a controlled choice program. Our realtor told us we were going to Coral Gables Prep. That's a decision that we will definitely have to make in the next 5 years, but it's something that concerns a lot of parents right now. The University of Miami has been a great partner, as the other part of the question. I've met with the Student Council president, and I know there's some issues affecting students in the Coral Gables as well, including the Santa Mauro Initiative, and it's something that I would like to work with the University of Miami on as well.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. You know, it is interesting. What is the interface between a city government and education? Maybe never the twain shall meet, but they do meet with the University of Miami, because there are negotiations periodic. I don't know if it's every 5 years, whatever, but they're major things that have to be voted on by the Coral Gables City Commissioners in relationship with the University of Miami. They want to, you know, build more apartments. They want to build more facilities, change facilities, this, that, and the other thing, hospital. So I'm sure that the people in this room agree with me that the University of Miami has just done so many spectacular things. That God bless you, Donna Shalala. So we want to do, we should do everything we can to keep Miami as good as it is. I mean, the University of Miami, as good as it is, it's unbelievable that we're doing so well.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes.
Yes, the school choice issue has been a very hot topic, and I'm going to stand by my previous statements. I am not in favor at this time of eliminating school choice, and there's several issues for that. I really look at it through a legal prism. At this time, the city of Coral Gables gets a benefit. They get a preference to the magnet program. And I'm going to tell you that if I was another municipality and they eliminated the school choice here in the city of Coral Gables, but yet kept the preference, I asked myself, what would I do? Well, I can tell you what I would do as their counsel. I would advise them to challenge it. And I'm telling you right now, that is a big concern of mine. There is a rule of unintended consequences, and that is one of them. Until you come to the point in time where we can actually say that it is time to eliminate that particular program, which is governed under the Florida statutes, by the way, and also we are not the only municipality in the state of Florida which abides by it, then there are certain concerns. And I stated in the last...
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell.
I just want one last thing here. It's really important. I stated in the last debate that I would study the issue of school choice. And right now, that is exactly what the school superintendent is doing. You have to study this issue before you make any rash decisions.
Thank you very much. Ms. Murato?
I believe the question is, what would the city do to collaborate or work with the University of Miami and the surrounding schools here within our city limits? I think the University of Miami and the city of Coral Gables have enjoyed a wonderful working relationship that has only increased under the leadership of President Shalala, who unfortunately will be stepping down next month. And we look forward to a new replacement so that we may share the same relationship and improve and have a thriving relationship with the university, which is such an integral part of our community. As a local elected official, if I have your support and your vote, and those of you that are listening and watching in your television, I would work diligently to continue making this city one where our services are top-notch, our quality of life is top-notch. Everything about our city has to be exceptional, and that's what attracts good people to have good schools, that have good PTAs, that have good school board members, so that we all watch out for each other, because it's the responsibility of different government entities and residents to make education a priority.
Thank you very much.
I think we all as a city want community schools, neighborhood schools. I think if you live across the street from a school, your children should go to that school. I've said this to Commissioner Keon and Commissioner Casada, champions of the education initiative here. I think we should expand the role of the Education Advisory Board pretty dramatically. I think parents should be making decisions on behalf of their students and have input as far as the city's concerned and how the city addresses the county. As far as is concerned, I think it's a tremendous resource, a fantastic think tank that we should lean on even more. These two gentlemen here in the front with my shirts on, those are the leaders of my volunteer team. They're students here at And so I'm a big believer in the U. Being a Gator, I say that. Being someone who went to UF, I grew up here, and I sort of bleed green and orange still. So I'm a big fan of I want to lean on them as a think tank, and I think we should expand the role of the Education Board.
Thank you. If you're a Gator, we have somebody from Bama who works at the University of Miami who does a pretty good job, too. Mrs. Slesny.
I'm really proud to have the University of Miami in the city of Coral Gables. It should be called the University of Coral Gables, but we'll not go there. As far as public schools, they're very, very important, and I believe that you should be able to send your child to your neighborhood school. I specialize in residential real estate, and 100% of it is residential, Tony. And I lose customers on a regular basis to the Pinecrest School District because people know that if they move into the boundaries of Pinecrest Elementary School, they will be able to attend that school. It's tragic that you won't find out until about 3 weeks before school starts exactly where your child will be going to school if they're starting school here in Coral Gables. And we need to remedy that situation.
Thank you very much. Excellent dialogue, many important points raised, but now it's time for closing remarks. And as I said at the outset, we're going to begin with the last person, and that's Ms. Slesnick.
This has been very interesting being a candidate, and I really appreciate all of you coming out today to participate in this process and to hear our views up here. I would really like to serve you as a commissioner in the city of Coral Gables. I feel that I have a lot of experience, and I would be honored if you would consider voting for me and electing me to the City Commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr.
Newell. Friends, neighbors, fellow residents, you are here tonight ultimately to make a choice. And my job is to make that choice as clear as possible. If you believe the best way to confront tomorrow's challenges is to repeat yesterday's failures, then you should choose one of my opponents. If you believe in dynastic government, if you want the same names and same faces in your city perpetually, then choose one of my opponents. If you want a public servant who will promise what they know they cannot deliver, who runs on not who they are, but on who they are not, then choose one of my opponents. But if you're ready for new blood, if you think new challenges require new thinking, if you believe that growth and preservation are harmonious rather than competing, and if you want in your commissioner someone who will strive to unite our city, not divide it, so that we may go forward with a unity of action that will usher in a better tomorrow, then I ask you to choose me. Thank you and good night.
Ms. Murado.
2 minutes?
1 minute.
1 minute.
I want to thank all of you for spending this time with us tonight and getting to know the 6 of us a little bit better. Over the course of the campaign, I hope you've gotten to know me a little bit better. I consider myself, and I hope you do too, a tireless worker. I educate myself on the issues. I evaluate all points, and I have absolutely no conflict of interest. As you evaluate the candidates of this race, I would want you to ask yourselves some of these key questions. Who has my back? who's going to represent me? Who is going to best stand up to a developer? Who is going to best stand up to those who seek variances to exploit the real estate market? I have no plans on becoming a developer. I have no plans on going into the real estate business. With me, what you see is what you get, and what you hear is what you should believe. I hope I can count on your support on April 14th so that I may be your new Coral Gables Commissioner.
Mr. Mitchell.
Yes, thank you. Well, looking at all this in totality, I am very optimistic, and it looks to me as if the future is very bright for all of us and for our community. We really are on the cusp of a renaissance here in Coral Gables. However, there are certain things that we need to do. We need to strengthen public safety, improve efficiency, invest in our basic infrastructure, and remain vigilant of any major development projects that come our way. We can work together for a brighter future, folks. And to do that, I need each and every one of you to be part of my team. I need your neighbors to be part of my team. And I need your friends to be part of my team. And I'm going to need you to go out and vote for me April 14th. And that way, we're going to be able to secure the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Holmes.
I want to thank the Coral Gables Chamber of Commerce for hosting this. I want to thank each and every one of you for coming tonight. I believe that I can do a good job as city commissioner because I was born here. My grandfather knew George Merrick, and because I think each and every one of you, one of the reasons that you like Coral Gables is that it's a safe place for your kids to be educated, to grow up free of crime, even while it's a progressive place with all these consulates, all these international businesses. We got the best of everything. I think that our city government is a little bit naive or a little bit too slanted one way or another, and we need to be worried. I'm worried about having a concrete canyon on Miracle Mile. We need to bring a department store to any redevelopment on Andalusia so that we keep our city on track. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. Fernandez.
On April 14th, we have an opportunity to set the course for the city of Coral Gables. It's an important decision. Those of you who are undecided, and I know many of you have told me you still are, you have an opportunity to educate yourself over the next 2 weeks about who the candidates are, what we stand for, and I hope we've been able to provide you with that opportunity today. I started on this journey just over a year ago. Started visiting the residents in the North Gables area, trying to find out what the issues were. At the time, I had no intention of running for office, but I was frustrated with the fact that our city was taking months and sometimes years to address the issues that were affecting residents. Since I started this campaign, I've visited 8,246 homes, and I've walked 426 miles. I could have been in Georgia by now. This campaign is about defending our city, defending it from crime, defending it from developers. Let's take our city back. On April 14th, I ask you for your vote. Together, let's keep Coral Gables beautiful.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fernandez. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for the Group 5 candidates. Best of luck to all of you. We're going to take a very brief break just to transition the dais to our next Group 4 discussion. Thank you. I'd like to welcome to the stage the candidates. First, Mr. Enrique Lopez. And now Commissioner Frank Quesada. I want to kindly remind everybody of the rules of the House. No insults, no heckling, no verbal outbursts of any kind. Anybody who breaks these rules will be asked to leave. Please also hold your applause until the candidates have finished and concluded their remarks. Now we're going to have 1 minute of opening statements from each candidate, beginning with Mr. Enrique Lopez. Mr. Lopez.
Thank you, Juan. Good evening, my fellow residents and business owners. We're here tonight because we love our oasis, Coral Gables. We face important issues created by our present leadership's inefficiencies, broken promises, and deaf ears. Our last 4 years are a testament to a higher debt on property taxes, higher fees, rampant traffic and parking, compromising of our public safety, and an overdevelopment frenzy. These have and continue to affect our quality of life. We cannot compromise it, and we must act to ensure it for future generations as our predecessors did for us. Tonight you will hear about the issues that we face. I will make commitments, not promises. I will commit with a unique transparency and integrity that has allowed me to be totally independent from those that buy into political process and this group's campaign. No strings attached to this candidate. Vet my candidacy. Ask me the tough and politically incorrect questions. I will always be responsive and give you a responsible and honest answer. You deserve no less. If elected, I will serve, night reign. It's all about our quality of life. Thank you.
Commissioner Quesada, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. First of all, let me say thank you to everyone here in attendance tonight, the residents watching at home, and to the Chamber, especially for putting on this great event. I've been honored to serve these last 4 years. We've had many accomplishments in the last 4 years. We have a commission, and I've been proud to serve on this commission that's taken on the tough issues in the city. When I took office, our reserves were anywhere between $1 million and $6.5 million, depending on who you ask. As we sit here today, and as we announced last week at a public session, our reserves are over $37 million. We've lowered the property tax rate 4 years in a row. We made much needed changes to the pension system, which were long overdue. Coral Gables continues to be one of the strongest business communities in South Florida, and we have the best residential community in South Florida. We have more than 150 corporate headquarters in our wonderful city, more than 20 foreign consulates, and I'm proud to say that we have excelled these last 4 years, and I continue to working with this commission and with the city to continue to improve our city. Thank you.
Thank you. If somebody could close the back doors to my right, I'd greatly appreciate it. Let's jump right to the substance. I'd like to go back to Mr. Lopez. What do you think are the key issues at stake in the city of Coral Gables right now? In earlier meetings, we've discussed police, we've discussed development, historic preservation, traffic. What do you think are the central issues in the city?
The feedback from residents, and thank you, Juan, is public safety. By the way, when we speak of police, it's not just police. This city has had the same number of firefighters dating back to 1993. The city has grown in population, the city has grown in size, the city has grown in territory, yet we have not addressed something very near and dear to us, fire rescue. The fact is that our response times have increased. And ladies and gentlemen, at least at my age, I can tell you 30 seconds can make the difference between life and death. So we have basically abandoned the public safety component. Overdevelopment frenzy. We do have a master plan. We have a plan that basically allows to build beautiful buildings. They don't have to be 19-story. They don't have to be 1.28 million feet. So we do have that type of master plan that allows us. And last but least, it's the quality of life. What is our quality of life? The things that make Gables special. More is not better. Thank you.
Commissioner?
Thank you. You know, when it comes down to Coral Gables, why people choose to live in this city, why residents choose to stay in this city, really comes back down to our residential neighborhoods and our infrastructure in place. If you look at what the city had in 2001, you know, we had an unfunded liability that really was, you know, was manageable. It was about $15 million. As we sit here today, it's over $240 million. That's what we inherited back in 2011 when I got elected. The way that we protect our quality of life, the way that we continue to improve our city is to really ensure that our finances are in order. We've worked on the reserves. Moving forward, absolutely, crime is always an issue. No matter if crime is up or crime is down, one crime is one crime too many. So that is always a central focus. We've budgeted more now than we've ever had in the past for our police and fire departments moving forward. Our finances are really a central focus, because without our finances under control, then we don't have the monies to invest in those necessary parts of our infrastructure.
Thank you. A hot topic in the earlier discussion was the Mediterranean Village project. The last time you gentlemen spoke as well, it was a very central topic. I'd like you to conclude your thoughts on that discussion and talk to us about your position regarding the Mediterranean Village project, beginning with Mr. Lopez.
Mediterranean Village is approved for 890,000 square feet. It's the old Spanish village under our master plan, our master. There's no need for anyone to try to attempt to increase that number of square feet, as they refer to it as a right legally, to 1.28 million square feet of mixed use, approximately 600 parking spaces short from the onset, and no real traffic plan. Let's be realistic. Those of us that do travel Ponce de Leon, for example, our firefighters, do not, and I restate, do not go down Ponce de Leon on an emergency call. They have to go down Salcedo to Alhambra. Why? Because of traffic. So I think there's responsible development that our master plan allows. Why are we bending backwards? Why are we allowing the special interests who fund our campaigns to basically allow things that are not under our quality of life component?
Just to set the record straight, I haven't received any monies from the Agave organization. Mr. Lopez alluded to that. As far as this project is concerned, I'm for a project at this location. All of us that have driven by this location for the last several years have really seen that it is a piece of property that is really looks abandoned at this point. It's really not consistent with the character of our city. What's important is that we have a project that focuses on.
You stop the time for a second? Thank you. I have a little one at home like that. They want to get their points across.
My apologies, that was my daughter.
Give him more time. Yeah, stop the clock, please.
Sorry about that. Get a little distracted when she cries. Getting back to the topic. So this project, I think it's important for us to make sure that it's a project that complements our downtown as well as complements our residential community. That area was rezoned during the last 10 years. I believe it was 2006, the last time that land was rezoned. We really need to make sure the impact on traffic for the neighborhood really doesn't impact it negatively. The developer had hired an outside consultant called Kimley Horn to really address the traffic impact. We've hired Tim Plummer, who is our expert when it comes to traffic plans in the city. And I think that it really is the most important aspect. When you look at what's been proposed, we really need to make sure that the impact isn't something that we're going to become Brickell, which is exactly what we do not want to be.
You both touched on the traffic issue. We touched on it earlier. Not only traffic along US 1, but traffic in the central core of the city on Ponce and Miracle Mile. What do you think are the low-hanging fruit solutions for traffic in the city of Coral Gables, Mr. Lopez?
Very simple, ladies and gentlemen. We have got to stop approving every traffic plan that is presented for every development and just say, oh, yes, it fits a need, it's okay, it meets the requirements, the various consultants. We need to be very precise, very to the point, and say, by the way, you are bringing X number of square feet, be it residential, be it commercial, whatever use it may be, and this impacts in these in the following ways. We have to stop, for example, the Agave project specifically refers to something called multi-mode use, which basically is their justification to go ahead and get away with, or try to get away with less parking. Ladies and gentlemen, I can always justify failure, but I am not going to sit idle. But we do have a quality of life issue that is impacting, that is traffic, that is, it goes into not only our central business district, but also our residential areas. So I think we need to pedal to the metal and make sure that we adhere to what our rule is, which is our master plan. Thank you.
To answer your question, low-hanging fruit is something that I proposed about a year ago before the City Commission, and that is lowering the citywide speed limit to 25 miles an hour. I think that's something that we will really see great returns on. I think that is really the immediate low-hanging fruit. When it comes to traffic plans that are proposed, I was on the Traffic Advisory Board before I was a City Commissioner, and all those traffic plans that came before certainly were not approved every single time. They were not rubber stamped. Tim Plummer, the engineer that we use, the city uses, has looked at this city more than anyone else. And really, he comes back with plans, and we don't always approve them. There are community meetings that are held, there are public meetings that are held, and the feedback is taken, and we always analyze to see what is going to be the best solution for a specific neighborhood. Also, when you look at what we have in our downtown, our backbone of our downtown really is our office sector. We have 10.7 million square feet of office space. 89% of that is occupied. The majority of the vehicles are coming Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, and an expanded trolley system will continue to take cars off the street. Thank you.
You know, a quality of life issue related to the traffic is the issue of bike safety. We've had an epidemic of biking deaths here in Miami. We had a recent death here in the city of Coral Gables. Plans for safe biking, lots of bikers in the eastern portion of the city near the county parks. Talk to us about bicycle safety within the city beautiful. Mr. Lopez.
Well, first of all, that is a priority. And we can sit here and blame the cyclists. We can actually blame the drivers. The bottom line is we need to provide a safe environment. They are equally entitled to use our roads and enjoy the beauty of our city by riding their bicycles. Unfortunately, there have been very many negatives associated with that. One of those things is that this commission has failed to complete a multi-million-dollar project under the Neighborhood Renaissance Plan, which does include cycling paths. Why it has been delayed? It has been funded for well over 4 years. We have been paying interest on $22.5 million of additional debt incurred a few days after my opponent came into office. I do not have the answer, but I can assure you one thing. Of the 17 projects that are under the Neighborhood Renaissance Plan, of which only 6 have commenced, I can assure you we will make sure that we quit paying interest and we quit having the money in the bank paying interest, and let's deliver on the projects of which we told all of you we would.
Thank you.
So I was at the forefront of pushing for a bike master plan in our city. We have a lot of cyclists that we're seeing coming through the city nowadays. You're seeing it through all, really municipalities throughout the country, throughout the world. We've looked at cities like Portland, Copenhagen, and other areas that have done it well and done it properly. We've set aside $400,000 for that master plan. We created that master plan, and the idea really is to protect not only the cyclists, but also the drivers. Because when you're driving a car, the last thing you want is a cyclist to cut in front of you. And when you're riding a bike, the last thing you want is a driver to cut you off. So it really goes both ways there. So we've set that money aside. We have been working with the county, and I have been trying to work with, at the time, Chairman Sosa's office, or Commissioner Rebecca Sosa, to get an additional $1.5 million so that we can actually develop this bike master plan to protect cyclists and drivers.
Thank you. Let's go back to Miracle Mile, what some argue are the heart and soul of the city. The Miracle Mile and Giralda Streetscape, your visions and expectations for that soon-to-be implemented project, Mr. Lopez.
Well, first of all, it was long overdue, except we've handled it the wrong way. Yes, we do need Miracle Mile. It is, I have had residents refer to it as derelict mile. Yes, there on the average you have between 20 and 22 storefronts that are empty on any given day. Yes, the sidewalks are dirty, the planters are basically cracking. It's basically a decaying infrastructure. Unfortunately, this has been intentionally allowed. Now, the plan is in place. This commission decided to go ahead and fund it to the tune of initially $18 million, then magically moved it up $25 million, $7 million additional without any input from anyone. And it's moving forward. There are a lot of things that are falling short, such as the fact that they plan to start in September, run it for approximately 18 months. You know, when government says 18 months, is really 3 years, and maybe ruin some of the businesses during their peak season, which is Christmas shopping.
Commissioner.
Thank you. I think it's important to understand what really is happening in on our Miracle Mile. We have about 3.7 million square feet of retail storefront in Coral Gables. We have about 96.7 occupancy rate. That's a very high number. Compare it to Miami Beach, which is, I believe, about 93% and has about double the amount of retail square footage. And we're about half the price, the retail price. As far as the plan, my vision for that plan is Miracle Mile is our main street. That is where we go celebrate graduations, birthday parties, anniversaries, and a tough week to go have dinner on a Friday night. That's what we have. It's a community downtown. The idea is right now we don't want to change the character and personality of what we have. We want to make sure that we improve it. When you walk down the street, you have cracks on the sidewalk, that are really just abysmal. Some of the trees are dying. We need more canopy. We need a more pleasant experience for residents and business owners. Thank you.
Mr. Lopez, how do we maintain business continuity and business development in the city of Coral Gables and juxtapose that with quality of life?
First of all, we maintain business continuity by providing the environment that is conducive to business continuity. For example, we have two recent restaurants, Lardy's and Panzerotis. They're people that spent, foreign investors. They're now residents of our city who spent close to $3 to $4 million to live their dream in the city beautiful. And everything from delays by our building and zoning department to basically a closed door by our commissioners and mayor, that basically they received no support, delays of projects, delays of their plans for execution. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let's be realistic. It's very nice to be government when you don't know what it takes to earn a penny or a dollar for that matter. We just tax and spend. And at the same time, with no premise or no consideration of what it takes a business person to open a restaurant, to maintain that restaurant, to attract clientele, and not have to go to the commission or the mayor and say, how can you help us? And they send you to Tina Sebago, who's an excellent person, but she handles a Coral Gables magazine.
So what we've done in the last 4 years, we've created a process so that businesses can expedite permits going through the city in certain circumstances. At the time, our current assistant city manager at the time was in the building department, and she put a study together, and that was in 2012, and we really sped up the process there. Not to say that we're perfect, not to say that we're done with that process. We went out and we hired an outside consultant that specializes in efficiencies for departments for moving permits through. They had meetings with the Chamber of Commerce, they had meetings with the Business Improvement District, they had meetings with our biggest retailers and merchants on Miracle Mile and property owners to ensure that we were doing all the right things to fit our needs so that we can be more efficient and moving forward. As a city commissioner, I've taken the role of trying to be the ambassador of the city. I meet with site selectors when they come into town. I meet with different organizations that are considering bringing their businesses to downtown Coral Gables. And I work with them, and I try to tell them all the different benefits that we have in the city to bring them to Coral Gables rather than going to Brickell or Doral or Blue Lagoon. Thank you.
Let's jump back to the issue of pension reform. It's on the mind of many residents in this city. People talk about the related costs, potential tax increases. It's come up at various forums. Mr. Lopez, I'd like you to address the issue of pensions in the city of Coral Gables.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, the pension issue is very real. First of all, we must honor what we committed to. It's almost like a mortgage. You sign for a 30-year fixed mortgage, and you don't expect the mortgage company, if it's fixed, not variable, to come in the midterm and change the terms and the rules of engagement. However, we also have failed to adjust for newcomers into our city the realities of what the economy is today. We cannot continue funding or providing the type of pensions that we're providing. But let's honor for those people that have worked for us for 20, 30, X number of years. At the same time, let us quit kicking the can down the road. We blame prior administrations. We blame everybody else, but we don't take the bull by the horns and address the issue. The issues must be addressed. We must pare down the actual liability, taking away from these pet projects into real things that do impact our quality of life. Thank you.
So, under my tenure as city commissioner, the city commission has not kicked the can down the road. September 11, 2012, I made numerous motions at an impasse hearing that we had with our unions, and through those motions, we saved approximately $1.9 million per year on that annual payment on the pensions. It wasn't an easy decision. It wasn't easy to make that call at that time. Majority of the commission supported those motions to make those changes happen, but it still is going to be an issue moving forward. People don't realize it, but we have one of the oldest pension systems in the state of Florida. Our pension system was created in the early 40s. Which is unique when you look at it, when you compare us to other municipalities like Pinecrest or Doral that haven't been around, haven't been incorporated for that many years, so they don't have those legacy costs that we make. Of the $26 million payment that we make every year, about 80% of that goes to retired employees. So the decisions with cost increases are always very difficult and always going to be looked at with a fine-tooth comb. Thank you.
I'm going to jump now to some questions submitted by the stakeholders. And one of the questions has to do with the utilization of public space in the city of Coral Gables by private companies for private gain, whether it's filming or special events or other endeavors. What is your position on the utilization of public spaces in the city of Coral Gables for private ventures. Mr. Lopez.
First of all, if it presents the opportunity for additional revenue, which we definitely need revenue, without affecting, for example, renting out Venetian pool that without affecting our residents' use of the pool, I have no issue with that. I think we need to be creative. We can't use the same old strategies that we've used for the last 20, 30, 40 years. At the same time, it is public property. We cannot allow it to be used for profit of a third-party entity or another entity that is not entitled to use of that property, and we would receive a higher return on investment on use of public spaces. If it betters our quality of life, I am for it. If it basically impedes or detracts from quality of life, I will definitely be adamantly against it.
So I think there's a time and place for everything. I'm sure many of you have seen on a Saturday or Sunday morning the 5K races or the different types of competitions that typically get staged in front of City Hall. Many times those are for charitable organizations, philanthropic organizations, but sometimes as well those are for-profit companies. And what we've done in the past is we require a police presence, we require traffic plans for those events. But then other circumstances that we've had in the past, and this is going a few years back, you guys may remember a popular TV show, Burn Notice, was actually filming in South Florida, in Coral Gables, near in a residential community, and some of the neighbors were upset about that. So, what we did immediately is that we reached out to them because they were using the public street in front of the house, and we made sure that they toned down the fake explosions and different things. So it really all depends and really all focused on not encroaching on the residential communities and not disturbing the residents.
Jumping over to another question from stakeholders, there are lots of stakeholders that are interested in a green agenda for the city of Coral Gables, renewable energy, solar energy, lead construction within the city of Coral Gables. Tell us about your vision for green energy and lead construction here in the city of Coral Gables, Mr. Lopez.
The vision is going to have to be the fact that we must start dealing with it. We have a commission. We have a green task force. Well, guess what, ladies and gentlemen? The green task force has no members on it. For the last 2 years, that green task force has had no nominations, or any nominations, to use proper English, for the green task force. The reality is we do have areas like South Gables where climate change is a fact. We will see the sea level rise. That has an impact 2 to 3 feet by year 2100, and that has an impact of that water coming in. We haven't addressed it. Frankly, we must start taking our environment seriously, and at the very least, start going beyond talking about it. A lot of talk, very, very little action, and obviously with potentially disastrous results.
So as Commissioner, we've set aside money to create a sustainability master plan and to obtain outside consultants to help us with a plan moving forward. We were one of the first municipalities in the state of Florida, grouped with Pinecrest and South Miami, to implement benefits, something called the PACE program, benefits for homeowners or commercial owners that implement green initiatives into their properties will get certain types of credits or tax breaks, and it works with J.P. Morgan, and it's something that's been very successful, and we were at the forefront of that about 2.5 years ago. We've also started to implement LED lights throughout the city. People in the past didn't realize that we did not control our street lights, and we worked out an agreement after a lawsuit with FPL that we were taking back control of those street lights, and we've started a program now for LED lights in some of the residential neighborhoods. We're testing currently 10 lights, which you can check out right near the Biltmore. And I will include the rest of my statement in my closing.
Let's talk about lighting for a second. You gentlemen have differed on the issue of street lighting and that portion of infrastructure. Mr. Lopez, you have an issue with overdoing it. Tell us about your vision for street lighting and balancing it also with public safety.
Well, first of all, we tend to throw everything as a consultant. And what I want to share with you is in the last 4 years, we have paid in excess of $4.587 million to consultants, attorneys. So you notice that every answer, we have a consultant. Well, consultants don't live in Coral Gables. Consultants don't necessarily understand our quality of life component. Consultants basically have an ulterior motive. which is to give you a very thick report and charge you a nice high fee, as you can see here. This is for the record, $4,587,183 in the last 4 years. Realistically, how many lights are out there that are not working? We do pay FPNL. Why don't we take FPNL and ask them to please comply with their agreement? We have, in addition to, for the last 4 years, unused, we have a $1 million project under the Neighborhood Renaissance Plan, part of the $22.5 million that we indebted ourselves in, are paying interest in, but we're not using for historic street lights. LED lights, ladies and gentlemen, we've seen some in Granada. I do not wish to have a Disney look in Coral Gables.
So when it comes to street lights in the city, when it comes with relation to crime, it's important that we have lighting in the neighborhoods. I attend many community meetings. I attend many Crime Watch meetings where residents like yourselves are upset when lights are out. Excuse me. And what happens is when you have more lighting in a neighborhood street, you know, we've heard from our police department, we've heard from our police chief that criminals are less likely to be coming down that street. They're going to want to pick a street that's darker, and it's a little bit easier for them to hide out in. So as far as lights throughout the city, I think it's absolutely necessary that we have that. As far as consultants moving forward, the consultants don't make the final decision. There are many times that we agree with them. There are many times that we do not agree with them. No one on the dais, no one in City Hall claims to know everything about absolutely everything. That's impossible. For anyone to tell you that they know all the answers is really, you know, the furthest from the truth that you can be. What it is it's experts in their field that advise us in certain aspects to which we make the final decisions after we hear from residents. Thank you.
First 100 days of a new tenure in office, what would you prioritize? What would be the first issues you would tackle in those early days? Mr. Lopez.
Hopefully I will be able to be in the second reading of the Agave project because they have a first reading coming in 2 days, and that's going to be a real test for the present commission who has basically waffled on the project. Now we'll look at it. Mind you that this project's been 3.5 years in the making. Number two, meet with the city manager and clearly understand we do have a real city manager now. Not someone that controls the commission, rather someone who basically executes policy. So we do have someone that understands our city, lives in our city. She has a stakeholder in the airplane she flies. Public safety, ladies and gentlemen, public safety. We can sit here, the stats are clear. We're not there yet. We have allowed it. We got behind the 8 ball, and we're now in catch-up mode. We still don't have a full complement of police officers to meet today's needs, exclusive of possible future needs.
I think the next 100 days after I get reelected, it's really going to be focusing on, first and foremost, some of the projects that are coming to the city and really carrying forward the traffic master plan that this commission has been working on. Again, when we all travel to Doral or the Blue Lagoon or downtown Miami, we hate that experience because how long it takes us to get there, how long we're sitting in lights, and how long we're sitting behind other people. So the traffic master plan at this point with what's going on in the city, I think is very, very important to make sure that we do it the right way and we learn from the mistakes of the other municipalities. Something that's very important is dealing with the FPL power lines that have been discussed. We're in the media in the years in the past, and actually a few months back. Continue trying to work to make sure they're underground and we don't have large power lines along US 1. We called a special workshop on pension issues that we have in the city. We need to continue those conversations. We need to continue all the different avenues so that we can control our revenues, so that we can control and we can continue improving our neighborhoods in our city.
Thank you. And gentlemen, before we go to the final statements of this debate, we have a question from the audience. This one actually comes from a former colleague and dear friend. Do you gentlemen support the construction of the One Riviera Paseo de la Riviera project? And if so, what do you propose to do to calm the traffic onto Caballero Boulevard? Let's begin with Mr. Lopez.
You know, this is a very interesting project. The fact is that now, and as a matter of fact, a former commissioner is very, very concerned about this project because it impacts neighborhoods. And the fact is, ladies and gentlemen, another example of the overdevelopment frenzy that resides in City Hall. Everything, it's a process. It's a process. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a process, but it is not being looked at Believe me, there's a lot of pressure to get these projects under the auspices of economic development and jobs. More is not better. You know, we are a city that can stand on our own 2 feet. We need minimal outside influence in our city. Projects of this nature that are counterproductive to the quality of life in any neighborhood must be looked at, must be downsized, or must be specifically measured and metric to, or benchmarked to ensure that they comply with a very strict zoning code that we have.
So for those of you that may not know the location of this project, this is on US 1. I believe it's across from the University of Miami, near the Holiday Inn site. I've heard about the project. I've seen a very preliminary rendering. I haven't seen the details. Most importantly, though, right behind the project, there's a residential neighborhood. And I think this project is very similar to the Somerset development project, the school project that happened just about 4 years ago. And really, there was a group that was in favor of the building of the project and the expansion of that school at Somerset. And there was a group that the neighborhood was concerned about the traffic coming into the area. Eventually, what we did at a public meeting with the assistance of Mayor Kaysen, myself, Commissioner Kurdyk, Anderson, and Cabrera, we had the developer go back and meet with the neighborhood and work out a deal, because our comments were, you know, the neighborhood needs to be protected. There can't be excessive traffic in that neighborhood. I think we have a similar situation here, that we need to fully hear from the traffic experts as well as the neighborhood before we make a final decision.
Commissioner, you mentioned the University of Miami a moment ago, and I think it's appropriate that we ask a question about the University of Miami and how we leverage this treasure in this community as far as business and economic development goes.
Absolutely, thank you. You know, the University of Miami is a gem for the city of Coral Gables and for South Florida. About 15,000 residents, 13,000 employees situated in the center of our city. We really need to take advantage of this relationship and foster this relationship. You know, I'm thankful that a lot of the many University of Miami alums and administration have supported me in my campaign. But moving forward, really what we need to focus on is I've engaged with the University of Miami. I've participated in volunteering and in teaching at some of their graduate programs for a one-day class or a two-day class in the past. I think it's important that we continue working with them. We're currently working with them on the school issue. With West Lab, we are currently working with the school board to allow West Lab to have a preference for at least a certain percentage of University of Miami faculty, so that University of Miami faculty can continue attracting great talent through its academics. So it's very important also with our development agreement, where residents get free tickets to certain events, art events, sporting events. I think it's great. Thank you.
Mr. Lopez.
Well, I can speak from about the University of Miami from a real personal experience. I earned this ring, Master of Science, Electrical Engineering, back in 1971, 75, 75, 79 with Dr. Henry King Stanford. Then I saw Dr. Tad Foote bring the northeastern aura into southeastern Florida. It is a gem. It is something that, as I call it, the University of Miami is our star resident. I have always supported the university's master plan presentations to improve our quality of life. It brings an educated workforce. It also nurtures education. It also provides support and very well-paying jobs, which is what we're trying to bring down into our community, or actually attract into our community. So the University of Miami is a cornerstone of Coral Gables. Without the University of Miami, I can assure you, Coral Gables may not be as beautiful as it can. However, we must work together and continue to maximize its presence here in support of our quality of life.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez. Commissioner, the floor is now yours for closing remarks.
Thank you so much. How much time do I have? Excuse me?
1 minute.
1 minute. Thank you. I want to say thank you again to the Coral Gables Chamber, to all of you here in attendance, to all of you watching at home. It's been a pleasure to serve the last 4 years. I think we've had a lot of accomplishments in the last 4 years. I think my record speaks for itself. Look at our reserves, look at the improvements that we've made on the pension obligations, look at the focus that I've put on traffic and improving the traffic within our city. Look at the focus that I've put on improving parks in our city, our residential streets, our sidewalks, and the quality of life and the focus and where we've allocated those funds. I want to clarify something before we finish up here. My opponent has spoken about debt several times, and it's a little tough in 1 minute to squeeze all the information in. It's important to note, yeah, we did take on additional debt when I first got elected. But at that time, we didn't have the reserves to invest in our infrastructure in the city. That was a different time. Our reserves, again, were anywhere between $1 and $6 million. As we sit here today, we're at $37 million. We've done everything we can to increase those reserves, invest in our community, invest in our public safety, and I humbly ask for your vote one more time. Thank you.
Mr. Lopez.
My fellow Gables shareholders, tonight you heard facts that highlight my opponent's inefficiencies, broken promises, inexperience, and indecisive leadership. A commission comprised of think-alikes, weak leadership, and plenty of strings attached is not healthy for any community and our city's quality of life. As your commissioner, I commit, I do not promise, I commit to always prioritize and never, ever compromise our public safety. We must not live in fear of being victimized. I will tackle our city's rampant traffic and parking situation, stop the overdevelopment frenzy, and honor our zoning code, as many developers have successfully done in the past. It's about quality, not quantity. Tackle our city's growing debt. It is debt, no matter how you cut it, it is debt. Always listen to you and represent your interests. I will be inclusive, not dismissive. My candidacy has no strings attached. Let us take our city's beauty to greater heights by taking control of our destiny. I will serve, not reign. I humbly ask for your vote for the privilege to serve all. Let us go out and vote on April 14th. It's all about our quality of life. Thank you and good night.
Gentlemen, a round of applause for the Group 4 candidates. Lots of important topics covered. Thank you very much. We're now going to take a 5-minute break, ladies and gentlemen, before the mayoral forum. You're welcome to step outside, but please return in 5 minutes as we transition the dais to our next event. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, let's first please welcome former Commissioner Ralph Cabrera to the dais. Round of applause. And Mayor James C. Kaysen, Mayor of the City of Coral Gables, to this mayoral discussion. Mr. Mayor. Thank you all again for joining us in this very dynamic evening. Coral Gables TV has filmed the program tonight and will be replaying it in the next 2 weeks. You can consult coralgables.com for more information about the rebroadcast. I'd also like to thank once again Ms. Myra Jolie and the Jolie Law Firm, our presenting sponsor, and the Coral Gables Bar Association for their partnership tonight, and of course the University of Miami, this wonderful facility, for hosting us here in the Field House. And I'd also like to thank all the candidates for their participation in this important forum. Remember to please vote on Tuesday, April 14th. Once again, in order to maintain the timeliness and proper decorum of the evening, I want to remind all of you on the ground rules in case you weren't around earlier this evening. Let's keep it professional. Insults, heckling, and other outbursts, including booing, will not be tolerated. Anyone exhibiting this type of behavior will be asked to leave. Please hold your applause till the end until the candidates have finished speaking. I thank you for your cooperation. You also have 3x5 index cards on your chairs. If you want to have a question either for one candidate or both candidates, please fill out those cards, and there are volunteers in the room who will collect them. Each candidate is going to begin with a 1-minute introductory opening statement. Each candidate will then have 2 minutes to answer each question, and will have 2 minutes for closing remarks at the end. The candidates are asked not to address each other or debate during this forum, instead to speak to the audience and speak to our viewing public. Let's begin. And we're going to begin with opening statements from Commissioner Cabrera. Mr. Commissioner.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here. As most of you know, I have lived in Coral Gables for nearly 50 years. I served as your commissioner for 12 years, and before that, I served on numerous city boards for 11 years. I know this city, and I have spent the last 4 months talking to many of you, and you know this city. You know what it needs. Coral Gables is once again at a crossroads. We have issues with crime, development, traffic, neighborhood schools, our downtown, and our finances. While we're beginning to see some improvement, much of it has been through pressure. What we now need is a collective vision and leadership to bring it forward. I am that person. The rest of the night will indicate to you that I have the right ideas and approach to leading Coral Gables into a brighter future. Again, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and I do like to announce that you may not hear me correctly tonight. I'm just getting over some bronchitis, so I apologize for that.
Thank you, Commissioner Cabrera, and now Mayor Kaysen.
Thank you all for coming out tonight. It's been a privilege to serve Coral Gables residents these past 4 years. As I promised, I have no business interest here or brothers-in-law, and I owe no one any favors. I've been a public servant for 45 years with no blemishes on my record, and my mantra is Coral Gables first. The mayor is the face of the city. I've been to 5,100 events and meetings representing the city, trying to attract business, listening to concerns, and I've never missed a commission meeting or a vote, never. All the commissioners, 3 former mayors, Chip Withers, and most of the city's community leaders support my reelection because they want the best person to lead us forward, not backwards. We are undergoing a renaissance and are working on 97 initiatives to further improve our quality of life. Reserves are at an all-time high, debt is low, and we have lowered the millage rate 4 times, and our services remain top-notch. Crime is down, especially residential burglaries, and the police have all the resources they've requested to implement our 10-point anti-crime program. And we've made great progress on pension reform and are about to renovate Miracle Mile. As the city grows, we will work to keep our future development in character with our values and codes, and that we will remain charming and inviting to visitors and residents alike. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Cabrera, we talked about many issues at stake here in the city of Coral Gables this evening, from crime to police, infrastructure, smart development, business development, traffic. How would you prioritize those issues? Which are the most important, and in what order?
Well, it's no mystery here. I would tell you that crime would be the #1 issue that I would tackle early on, followed by development. Development includes infrastructure challenges. It includes traffic. It includes intrusion into neighborhoods. Those are very important issues that affect the quality of life for so many of our citizens. So those 2 would be my 2 top priorities.
Thank you. Mayor Kaysen?
I think we've, in the last 4 years, really turned around our finances. I think they're in great shape. What that does now is allow us to, 4 or 5 new opportunities to, as long as property values keep going up, we can either pay down debt, we can improve the quality of life, we can fund infrastructure projects that are coming online with cash rather than with debt. We can put more money into our pension system, which is in dire need of more money, capital infusion. So I think we want to keep our finances strong. I think we have to work on pension reform. There's a lot more work to be done. We're still one of the most indebted cities in Florida, and we have more work to be doing with the 3 unions, I think, in terms of contract negotiations. And we have to look at the 175, 185, which I'll talk about later, pot of money, $22 million that are available for the police and fire above and beyond the pensions they're getting. I want to see some of that money used to go back and to shore up the retirement system rather than their retirement benefits themselves.
We're going to come back to those issues in just a few minutes, but I want to talk about traffic, which is another issue that was raised in earlier forums. Traffic, especially along US 1, Ponce, Miracle Mile. People are also interested in biking and cycling safety in the city beautiful. Commissioner, if you could address those issues.
Well, let me address the traffic issue first and then the cycling issue second. When I first took office in 2001, ladies and gentlemen, the #1 issue affecting the people of Coral Gables was, in fact, traffic. It was a very serious issue. It was affecting neighborhoods, and primarily because of cut-through traffic. 75% of all cut-through traffic in our city, east-west traffic, doesn't belong in the city. It's used by others who are out west, and sadly, the western sprawl continues. One of the things that I began to do was to look at traffic in a very holistic manner. I created the Traffic Advisory Board. I worked with a number of neighborhoods to ensure that we had traffic calming measures, to ensure that the quality of life wasn't compromised. I developed a program called Children at Play Signage Program. This is where children could buy at the youth center, or parents could buy at the youth center, yellow signage that would allow the kids to play out front so that they would at least have some sort of safety and allow the motorists to know that there were kids there. As far as cycling is concerned, I've been a competitive cyclist for 35 years. I am the co-founder of Gables Bike Day. I'm the co-founder of Bike Walk Coral Gables, which is a not-for-profit organization that works on cycling-related issues, whether it's safety or awareness. So to me, those are 2 issues that are very close to my heart, and I will continue to work on those as I become your mayor.
Mr. Mayor.
Well, I would agree that most of the traffic we have in the city is cut through. For example, if you look at the red light cameras, we have 5. 73% of the people that get tickets there are not Coral Gables residents. And because those cameras in place, 96% of them never get another ticket. I'm in favor of putting another 5 red light cameras in the city. I've been talking to the chief of police where they should go because they really do reduce traffic accidents. And the more we can have our police focused on the crime issues rather than accidents, that's to the betterment of the city. We're always going to have traffic. What we can do about it is we can enforce traffic laws, we can put more traffic calming devices in, and we can make sure that when development goes up, that the developers do everything they can to mitigate traffic, provide adequate parking. If you look at, for example, another indication of cut-through traffic is if you look at the vehicles where somebody steals something from them, 44% of them are not even Coral Gables residents. And I've asked the chief of police today to give us some statistics on how many of the 3,000 auto accidents we have each year are actually auto accidents that involve Coral Gables residents. I think we're going to find a very large number of those are not Coral Gables residents. So yeah, it's not the development in the Gables that's causing the traffic. We only grow about 2% a year. It's the traffic that's coming through the city to places like Brickell, which are developing, just out of sight. And we're never going to develop like that. So our contribution to traffic is going to be very small. Thank you.
Any words on the cycling issue, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, we have a master cycling plan. I've gone to all the bike events. We put in $600,000 to link our bike pass with a neighboring bike pass. I think it's an integral part of what we need to do for looking forward for the traffic issues. We need to have more people walking, bicycling in our city, fewer people riding cars. And I think to the extent that our mixed-use developments that are coming online promote residences over condos, over businesses, we're going to see more people going without cars.
And that's a good segue to development. I'd like to talk about development now in the city of Coral Gables, specifically some large projects such as the Agave Mediterranean Village project, the surrounding impacts. Commissioner Cabrera, what is your position on the Mediterranean Village project?
Well, I have some strong concerns about the project, but first and foremost, let me say that the Agave Corporation, they just didn't show up here last week or 6 months ago. They've actually been in talks with the city of Coral Gables for 3 years. The sad part is that no one here knows that. Everyone knows about the last 6 months. But 3 years ago, I happened to have been on the city commission. No one knew about Agave then. No one knew about Agave until just 6 months ago, as I just pointed out. So as we talk about them, understand that they're frustrated. They're frustrated because they were sadly dealing with one person in the entire city, the city manager. And that person would not allow that to be discussed amongst anyone other than his office. So as we talk about the project, it's important to at least be fair to this particular developer. As it relates to the development, I think it's out of scale. I think that density needs to be looked at very carefully. The density not only has to be looked at carefully, but it needs to be looked at in comparison to the existing structures in the city of Coral Gables. I've talked about traffic a little bit. One of the things that I find interesting is when I was a commissioner, every single development project that came to us had a traffic engineer. That traffic engineer provided a traffic study. I never once in 12 years as a city commissioner saw a traffic study that did not benefit that developer. So my proposal is take that away from the developer. In the case of Agave, ask them to fund the traffic study, but allow the city to do an unbiased independent study of the traffic study to ensure that it's not going to not only affect Ponce and Douglas Road, but it's not going to affect a neighboring residential community. It's not going to affect the 7 to 9, the 4 to 6 rush hour traffic. Those are very important criteria that needs to be done by the city, not by a developer.
Mr. Mayor.
Think back, our first developer was George Merrick. Thank God he was here. He developed a great city. All of us that have followed him have respected his vision. We have an economy that's booming. We have interest rates down. We've got new businesses wanting to come to the Gables. And I think that's good for downtown because 5% of our property contributes 40% of our revenue, and that allows us to keep lowering the millage rate like we've done for 4 years and we'll do for a 5th year. We've got a lot of new businesses coming into the Gables, quality international firms, and the people that work there want to live in the Gables. They don't want to have a car. They want to be able to bike. We have a shortage of residential housing and condos for people in their 30s and 40s. So we're going to be seeing new condos. We're going to see new apartments, hopefully mixed-use units coming up. These people are going to want to walk to work, they're going to want to walk to eat, and we're going to see Miracle Mile renovated after 35 years of blah, blah, blah. It's actually going to be done. And I think that the Mediterranean Village project is a good project. I think it's gotten better from when I first saw it 3.5 years ago. I actually, with the Beacon Council, recruited them to come to the Gables. They had done 396 Alhambra, which is a wonderful project. They're coming into the Gables, and they're going to put in $35 million of benefits to the residents. They have right now the possibility, because it's all zone commercial, to put in 1 million square feet of retail. Imagine what that would do to traffic, but they're not doing that. They're putting in 300,000 square feet. And this is, by the way, supported by the BID and the Chamber and the neighbors that are around. And it's been 3.5 years, 15 meetings discussing this. 7-0, the Planning and Zoning Board supports it. I think this project, we have to hear some more from them on next Thursday in terms of traffic mitigation, but they're going to buy us 4 trolleys, and they're going to pay for 25 years, $16 million to mitigate traffic. And who do you think has more of an interest in traffic mitigation and parking issues than group of developers like the Agave? They're going to put $650 million into the Gables. They want to make sure that it works. So I'm sure that for their own interest and with us watching, we're going to be able to have that project contribute not only to the economy of the Gables, but to the beauty and the quality of life.
Gentlemen, let's switch gears to the residential side of things. Commissioner Cabrera, what is your position on historic preservation and property rights and the perceived dilemma of overly restrictive regulations at times?
Well, first and foremost, you're talking to someone that's lived here nearly 50 years. So I love our historic preservation, and I love our zoning code, and I love to maintain the quality of our historic structures. So I will continue to support them. You know, I'm someone that, when I first came to this country, we couldn't afford a home here. But the closest that we could come was Douglas Road, a small 2-bedroom apartment. And I have to tell you, I almost remember my mother to this day making yellow rice and chicken. But at Douglas Entrance, we lived right across from it, and that was a historic preservation space, a space that was very, very important to my family. Then growing up as a young boy, I used to spend my summers at Venetian Pool and enjoying those cold waters that were constantly 71 degrees. As I became older, I began to realize how important historic preservation is. So for me, historic preservation will always be one of the priorities in my life. And I can tell you that I can show proof of that. When I took office in 2001, I realized that the Merrick House was in deplorable condition. And I worked with Arva Moore Parks to ensure that we brought it back to the quality gem that it is. And I happen to call it our Plymouth Rock, because that's where George Merrick lived. And that's where the family really got started. So for me, historic preservation is synonymous with good government. And I will continue to support it as long as I'm able to serve as an elected official.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor?
I moved to Coral Gables. I could have chosen anywhere in the world to move to. I came here from Paraguay. I'd lived in 15 countries. I chose Coral Gables because of the quality of life, because of the beauty, because of the historic buildings here. I didn't find a place in the world that was as beautiful and as welcoming as Coral Gables. So obviously I'm in favor of historic preservation. I think that we have to be careful that the buildings we designate as historic really are historic buildings. Not all buildings that are old necessarily need to be preserved, but I think we've done a wonderful job as a city of preserving. We have thousands of homes on the historic preservation list. Speaking about Merrick House, it's under my administration that we have put money in to almost $1 million, and any money that's going to be required is going to be put in there to bring that house back up. And not only that, but a lot of other buildings that have been decaying over the years because of lack of focus on them. Not only places like Merrick's house, but we're fixing the Venetian Pool right now. We're fixing City Hall. Things that should have been fixed a long time ago, like the fire station that's been decaying for 20, 30 years. And previous commissions didn't do a damn thing about it. We're fixing that. So yes, historic preservation is very important. It's one of the key values of Coral Gables. I think we've done a wonderful job, and I don't know of any commissioner that would or has voted against any building that's of historic character. And we even give 10-year tax breaks for people to fix them up. And we've never turned one of those down. So yes, historic preservation is one of the key values of Coral Gables and what differentiates us from neighboring cities.
Commissioner, tell us about your view of the Underline project.
I think it's a great project. I've talked to Meg Thompson, and I have to tell you, I attended the conference that was held in downtown Miami. I completely support it. I'm a cyclist, as I said before. I love riding from Coral Gables to Key Biscayne. Using the underline to be able to do this will be a very positive thing, but more importantly, it'll be a linear park for not only Coral Gables, but for all of Miami-Dade County. So as we move forward in this project, I can tell you the political will be the way it happens, and I will be one that will provide that political will.
Our city's already put money into the underlying project. Meg Daly's my appointee to the Cultural Development Board, and I met with her early on, went to the early meetings of the underline. I've been to the ones downtown. I totally support it. I think it's going to help transform Coral Gables. I think it's going to also be a way to link bike paths, and there's a lot of opportunities there to put interesting things in that, in that area. Artistic art in public places, all kinds of opportunities. So it's a wonderful project. I commend her for her leadership on that, and I will continue to support it as mayor for the next 2 years.
You know, this issue is related to a lot of the green visions and agendas for many cities across this country. Commissioner Cabrera, what are the things that this city should be doing in the realm of green energy and green agendas, solar power, renewable energies?
Well, you know, it's interesting, Mr. Mendieta. I heard the previous speakers, and I too am surprised. I was a co-founder of the Green Task Force in our city, and I heard the comment about using consultants. One of the reasons that we co-founded, or one of the reasons that the Green Task Force was founded, is because we had so much talent in Coral Gables. We didn't have to go and buy it. We didn't have to go out and search for it. We have talented architects, talented engineers, lots of folks that have lots of experience with green initiatives. And sadly, as I heard tonight, most of the people, if not all the people that serve on that board, it's a vacant board. So it's a very sad state of affairs where we have to hire consultants to tell us what we need to do. We've got people, in fact, we probably have people in this room tonight that could help us on the greening initiatives that sadly are not being used.
Mr. Mayor.
Look, the problem with the Green Task Force is you had 12 or 13 people. Each one had a different specialty. They were not appointed by the commission. They were appointed by various organizations. They started not showing up, and it's not because the past city manager, held them back. The point is, you know, and people in the green movement are very passionate. Each person has a specialty. They were not able to come up with a list of priorities that the city could operate on. So the city has gone, we've done 6 or 7 things. We've hired a half-time green person to work in public works to honcho this whole process. We've got a consultant, a very good consultant, that's working with all the stakeholders to come up with a list of priorities, the low-hanging fruit, the things that are more difficult, the things that will require money, but we will have a plan shortly that we can then move forward on. I was one of the people that pushed for the PACE program that you heard earlier in residential. We started off with commercial, it's now moved to residential. We're one of the founding cities in South Florida that are part of this program. We've also got a master sustainability plan that I mentioned is underway. We've got a bike and pedestrian plan that's underway, which also is related to greening, getting people out of cars. I'm a member, one of 5 members of the Clio Institute on sea level rise. We've met looking at what we need to do in zoning codes, building codes, looking forward to the inevitable day when the seas rise and we, with a city with 44 miles of canals, we're going to have some real problems. We've also planted 4,000 trees. I know my competitor doesn't like trees, but trees George Merrick planted 20,000 of them soon after he developed the city. They're very important for us, for carbon footprint and for oxygen. We put in the Ingraham Park. Take a look at that beautiful park. We've got parks everywhere we're going in. So yes, we need to have a functioning a green task force with all the input from the citizens that gives us a list of priorities, starting with recycling and things like electric charging stations, all kinds of stuff we can do. But that's one of my priorities.
Mr. Mendieta,
You have an opportunity to retort at the end. We have to maintain the format of this discussion.
Thank you.
Let's go on to another issue that was brought up earlier, and that's the issue of pensions. Certainly, for many years, a wonderful recruitment tool for public employees, but for many cities becoming a major burden. How do you approach the issue of the pension program here in the city of Coral Gables? Mr. Cabrera.
Well, first and foremost, pension is not something new. It's a systemic problem that's occurred since most governments started them. I have to share with you that politicians always want to take credit for anything good that's done on pensions. Please understand something. Politicians can't change pensions. The pension programs, the pension changes are done through collective bargaining. Labor state laws do not allow politicians to do this, and it's a simple reason. Once a city or a government has a negotiation with a collective bargaining unit, a union, and they can't come to an agreement, that government's officials, the elected ones, people like Jim and myself, we are the ones that become the judges. We are the ones that must make the decision on behalf of the city, what's best for the city. And therefore, you hear people say, well, we did this, we did that. We did lots of good things when I was on the commission. We did things in 2003, we did things in 2005, and all the way up to 2009. We took the plan from being non-contributory to being fully contributory. But those things were done through collective bargaining process. And in many instances, when those things happened, there were impasses, and the commission had to be the judges. Can we do more? Absolutely. We continue to deal with the elephant in the room, and that's the unfunded liability. 4 years ago was $197 million. Today is $243 million. It's not one person's fault, but it needs to be wrangled. It needs to be controlled. So as we talk about the good things that get done about pension, understand it's a very complicated process that includes the unions, the management, and finally, the elected officials.
Thank you.
Yes, I think you need to look at this chart that I handed out earlier. Look at this blue line. This is the pension obligation that went from 105% funded to 47% funded during the last decade. We went from spending $5 million of our general budget to $26 million in the first 10 years of the last decade. It is the elephant in the room. Frank Casada and I took the lead on pension reform. That's one of the reasons that we did that is because it was Ross Perot's giant sucking sound. It was taking all the money out of the city going to pensions. But the board that when Ralph was on the commission, they did nothing, and they admitted it. I'm going to read you again. I read it at the last commission meeting, the last debate. I'm going to read it again. What they said at 2007 at the budget meeting. Mayor Selesnik said, "I can just tell you what I see. We were all betting and hoping on successful pension reform. We've been hoping for several years. It hasn't happened. Pension reform is one of the biggest things that we're trying to do." Ralph said, "How long have we been harping on this?" The mayor said, "A long time, and that's why I'm saying, so I'm not sure I can count on that happening in May." Ralph said, "It will happen. You know when it will happen? It's when we go down the tubes, when the proverbial excrement hits the oscillating device. We are dealing with things in a reactive format, and we'll deal with this one, you know, when the expletive deleted hits the fan. That's when we'll deal with it." And he said later on, he said in that same meeting, "This was our fault. We are all responsible for that, the five of us. We created that hole, and then it stops." That's exactly right. Our pensions have gone out of sight. We're the third most indebted in Florida on a per capita basis for that. And the reason why the pensions went up, because we gave too many benefits to the unions. We gave them 3.5 times the cost of living, hired 100 extra people, and gave them massive pension benefits. And that's why we're in this mess that this commission is working on, and I have a solution for it.
Gentlemen, this is a chamber event, so let's switch to the subject of economic and business development, which obviously is of particular interest to this chamber and many people in this audience. The Herald recently had an article on Business Monday about the number of businesses that have relocated their headquarters here to this city. Tell us about your vision for economic and business development over the next 4 years here in this city, beginning with Commissioner Cabrera.
Well, first and foremost, we have tremendous assets that we can bring to new businesses that come to Coral Gables. Sadly, we just don't provide those assets. One of the things that I can tell you is, as a new business comes to Coral Gables, our Coral Gables Planning and Zoning Department should have a representative that assists that business in understanding all the rules, the guidelines, the regulations that affect a new business in our city. We should also work with businesses to help them find parking for their employees. Many times there's lots of parking in our city, but no one knows about it. There are many buildings, commercial buildings, that are looking for tenants for parking purposes. We have the assets here. The Coral Gables Country Club is another venue that most businesses don't really know about. It's a gem. It's sitting here in Coral Gables. The Biltmore Hotel, partnerships with those kinds of organizations to allow businesses to not only get to know the city of Coral Gables, but to enjoy the benefits and the amenities that the city provides. Sadly, we try to lure them with comments about development or comments about how this is the metropolitan area for the southern hemisphere. It is, but more importantly, it's one of the most beautiful communities in all of the southern region. Look where we are tonight, the University of Miami. There are so many opportunities that can be provided to business by having this gem, this private university, 60 acres, and having the tools and the necessary avenues to utilize to bring businesses with actual assets that exist today that we don't have to go out and make up or create or spend the money on.
Look, I used to, when I was an American ambassador and deputy ambassador for 13 years, one of the assignments I had was I ran U.S. trade promotion in Southern Europe in Italian. I know business. I brought lots and lots of businesses to Coral Gables. I worked very closely with the Chamber. I cut the ribbon on every single new business that opens in Coral Gables that wants someone to come there and stand next to them and say thank you, as I do, for coming to Coral Gables, risking your money, your future on our city. We want you here. We love you to come to Coral Gables. I also write a letter to every newcomer, every single person that moves into Coral Gables gets a personal letter from me. And the Chamber and the Economic Development Office also sends a letter to all new businesses. I work with the Beacon Council. I'm in my office every day. I talk to lots and lots of people that want to relocate to Coral Gables, and I tell them why this is the greatest city to be in. It's because of the quality of life. The reason we won silver in China a year ago for quality of life is in part because if you look at the seal that George Merrick developed, you had business on one side and culture. We mix culture and business. Coral Gables is a headquarters for 160 corporate headquarters. They want to be here because they want their families to be safe as they are. They want them to live in a beautiful community, and they want a community where they have they can go to the schools of their choice. They like the churches that are here. And they come for the quality of life, and that's why so many businesses are coming, and that's why we need to have housing for the young millennials so that they'll stay here. And the companies, a lot of times they say they don't want to, the ones that don't want to come to the Gables, either they can't find enough space or they don't have housing for their kids or for their spouses. So in terms of the trolley, we take 1.3 million people free every year in Coral Gables from the mass transit into the Gables. So we're doing a lot for businesses. And as a person that's been involved, I used to work for the Department of Commerce. I think it's critical because they pay, as they say, a good chunk of our taxes and allow us to lower residential millage rates.
Mr. Mayor, you mentioned the trolley. We had somebody email about trolley service on Saturdays. Is that part of your plan?
Yes. In fact, if you look at one of the things that that we're looking at, apart from the Agave project, is we have a master plan for trolleys. We've already extended the trolley up to, it's going to McFarland Homestead, and we're going to have a downtown loop. And the Agave project, if it's approved, they're going to buy us 4 trolleys, and we're going to be able to expand the number of the hours during the day and also perhaps on weekends, so that we can take people from that project down to our renovated Miracle Mile, and people can get to work, and we want to keep it free. And I think there's nothing more important than looking at mass transit in South Florida, because the other cities have totally failed to do anything about it. They're building like mad. And I don't know how that traffic's, if you're living on Brickell, all those people are going to want to come to Gables one of these days, because you can certainly travel better and park better here than in those areas. But trolley is critical to and bikes and walking to the future of Coral Gables.
Commissioner, anything to add on the trolley issue?
No, I was there when we started the trolley. Jim wasn't here.
Let's talk about Miracle Mile. You both have mentioned that it is your downtown. It's really your central core in your heart. Talk to us about the Miracle Mile and Gerald, the streetscape project, and about your vision for Miracle Mile. We've had some people talk about blight and some issues of improvement. Commissioner Cabrera, tell us about Miracle Mile.
Well, I'm excited about the fact that the Miracle Mile streetscape is moving forward. I have to tell you that when it was being in the development stages, I asked a lot of difficult questions. I asked questions because those were important questions. For example, I never got a straight answer about the number of parking spaces that were going to be lost on Miracle Mile. To this day, we're not 100% sure, but it's somewhere around 116 spaces. That's about half of the parking spaces that are there today, because that's simply because we're turning angle parking into parallel parking. But we missed a great opportunity on Miracle Mile, and that opportunity was to develop the parking garages immediately behind Miracle Mile. I don't know about most of you, but when you renovate a home or a building, you start from the back and you move to the front. For me, parking is critical for the downtown area because of commerce, because of the restaurants, because of the stores. I would have preferred to have seen us develop those two garages, and the garages I'm referring to are immediately south of Miracle Mile. One is next to Miracle Theater, and the other one's next to Publix. I would have loved to have seen us develop those garages first before tackling on the streetscape. But we're past that, so we need to move forward. I guess the biggest concern that I have is the debt. I'm not sure if you know, but this is a $20 million project. It probably won't come in at $20 million. It'll come in somewhere around $25 million. Bottom line is, parking revenue is $13 million a year. Annual revenue from parking, both on-street and off-street. A lot of that money could have gone to offset the debt that was incurred by this new project.
Mr. Mayor.
Look, this is our signature street. We got to get it right. If we don't fix it, it's going to be a miracle anybody who walks on our mile. And other cities have been building their miracle miles. We have lots of competition. We've been blah, blah, blah about Miracle Mile for 35 years. This commission has taken action. We've been discussing it for over 32 years. I look back at the 1983 election, and they said the long-delayed streetscape project. There was always an excuse not to move forward. Usually it was those parking spaces. We don't know how many parking spaces because we don't have the design yet. That's being developed by the commission of citizens and experts that's working on that. But this commission has had the initiative and the cohesion to unanimously move this forward. That's leadership. We worked with a 50-50 split with the bid and with the neighboring businesses. They've agreed to it. We selected the world-class firm of Cooper and Robertson, which is developing ideas for this right now. We've concluded the bond validation. We're going out for bond financing bids right now. It's probably going to be around 2.4%. Never a better time to be able to do that. We're going to pick a construction firm shortly, and we're going to make the construction as fast and painless as possible. And we've got a representative advisory committee of business owners, the BID, the Chamber, the University of Miami, a whole bunch of citizens to work on each of the design elements that they're going to bring us in June. I expect construction will start in September. And we've held numerous meetings on this. And we're going to be doing the garages as well. Those garages are going to be done afterwards. And so hopefully we're going to have this a reality very shortly. You know, this is going to be an exciting streetscape. I think that when we talked with the construction firm and the developer, we said we want the wow factor. We want people to come here and say, oh my God, look at this. This is fabulous. And I think that's what we're going to get. And I think that's going to bring new businesses, new people in. It's going to make it more profitable for the business owners there. And that in conjunction with the Agave and Merrick Village are going to make our city extremely attractive for people to come, live, work, and play. Thank you.
Gentlemen, attractive cities often have public spaces and public places that third parties and private entities want to use, in many cases for private gain. I understand that some cities use these for revenue generation, but how do you balance the utilization of public spaces for private ventures with the potential economic gain? Let's begin with Commissioner Gaudeta.
Well, you know, you have to be very careful when you do something like this, not to compromise the quality of neighborhoods for commercial gain. So as you look at those kinds of opportunities, you have to be very sensitive to, first and foremost, that residential component that is not compromised. So I have a tendency to be very traditional in my thinking, and I believe that public venues need to be used by the public and not taken advantage for private gain.
I agree. I don't know of any of these right now. I mean, they haven't come to us. I think that public spaces are for the public. I think we need to do everything we can to improve those spaces. I think we're putting, I mean, so much of our public spaces have deteriorated over the years because of the lack of money. We didn't have money for anything. The reason we took on debt, the reason you buy a house with a mortgage is because you don't have cash. The reason we took on debt, and by the way, 60 million of it took place in the last decade. We take on debt because we didn't have the finances to pay cash. And we had to fix our infrastructure. That's why I'm so happy about the Neighborhood Renaissance program. You know, we've done 55 lane miles of roads. We put in 4,000 trees. We're fixing 10 miles of sidewalks, things that have not been taken care of in decades for the lack of money. So our public spaces are very important. We're increasing our public spaces. You're going to see not only on Miracle Mile, but in front of City Hall, there's going to be a new park there. We're going to fix a park across from the Mediterranean Village. We're buying new parks, new parklands. they're all being done with public money. We have public-private partnerships, things like bringing back the fireworks and those sorts of ventures, and we have private groups, for example, running the museum with the city contributing, like Actors Playhouse, money for the cultural, and more we've been contributing money to maintain the infrastructure and the upkeep of places like Actors Playhouse and the museum and the art cinema. So yeah, I agree with Ralph that public money should go to public spaces, and we should do everything possible to improve them.
Speaking of infrastructure, it came up earlier, is the issue of lighting, street lighting. Very important for public safety, but at the same time, many feel it has to be the right type of lighting. Commissioner Cabrera, your issue on street lighting in Coral Gables.
Well, I can tell you that that's one of my points on fighting crime. I think street lighting, especially in the neighborhoods north of Coral Way, really need to have street lighting. And it's funny because several weeks ago I had an opportunity to meet with the Vice President of External Affairs from Florida Power and Light, who had recently retired. And he said to me, Ralph, I've never heard anyone in the Gables ask for more lighting. And I said, well, that's because we didn't have the issues that we have today. And there can be done in a very, very inexpensive way. It can be done with tree trimming. It can be done with reduction of height of lighting. It can also be done with historic lighting fixtures. My opponent talks about this Neighborhood Renaissance program. One of the few things that I liked about it was the lighting component, but it's yet to be used. That money's sitting there. It hasn't been used in 4 years. So there is an opportunity to take that kind of initiative and primarily focus on the North Gables, because that's an area that really needs it. I said before, and I've said it again, I cycle, and I come out early in the morning, sometimes as early as 5:30. Can't see my hand in front of my bike. And I do go by some of the northern neighborhoods. It's very, very scary. And imagine what the criminals are thinking about when they ride at that time of the day or drive that time of the morning. They see great opportunities for all kinds of activities.
Thank you.
Look, there's three owners of lights in Coral Gables. The county owns some, FPL owns some, and the city owns some. We have about 4,000 lights. We, as part of our settlement with FPL on reducing the height of the power poles, we have the right to actually put LED lights in and run our 4,000 lights. So that'll be cheaper, and also they'll be brighter. But you have to remember that in Coral Gables, we always ask the neighbors what they want. If somebody wants more lighting and they don't have lighting, if the neighbors get together, we work with FPL, and I think there's a representative of FPL here, and we put the lights in. If lights are burnt out, we now have a new app that you can get on and click, and if we hear about a light burnout, we've increased our coordination within the city to quickly fix those. What happens is that FPL has a standard time they go around and check lights. The city does it as well, but we need the residents to tell us as well if the lights burn out. But there are a lot of neighborhoods that they don't want more lights. I mean, it's a neighborhood decision. But yes, and we have people out trimming our 38,000 trees every day. And if there comes to their attention that there's, and especially if the neighbors bring it to their attention that trees have grown up over or underneath the lights and they can't see, then they cut them. So, yeah, I mean, one of the things that the new city manager has done, and I applaud her for it, is she's created a new assistant city manager for public safety, which has under it fire, police, and lighting issues. Because too often the lights were handled by Public Works as a Public Works issue, whereas the crime angle was handled by the chief of police or the city manager. So I think this new structure is going to be able to do a lot more to bring lighting to the neighborhoods that want it. Anybody out there that wants some lights, just call our office, call the city. We'll do everything we can to get you the lights. And if they're burnt out, let us know. We'll fix them.
Gentlemen, you mentioned the issue of lights in tandem with crime. The mayor reports and the police department reports that crime stats are actually down in the city of Coral Gables, but it seems that crime continues to be a central part of the debate and discussion here in Coral Gables. Commissioner Cabrera, why is that so?
Well, it's because since I started walking in just after Thanksgiving to this day, I still get that as the #1 issue affecting the people of Coral Gables. Let me share with you what Vice Mayor Bill Kurdike said during the September 11th, 2015 meeting on crime, and I want to quote him. And he says, "When crime is affecting people, that's when we are having issues. Before we move forward, we have to look at why we are in this hole. For years and years, we've tried to increase our police department. We've gone from over the last 15 years from 154 police officers to I think 194, 193 police officers. But the real problem is, of course, we don't have police officers in those seats. And that's sort of a shame on us to a certain degree up here, because we should have been demanding from staff. I'll point the finger at me because I have been here longer than anybody. I should have been demanding of staff that we fill those vacancies. Not only does my former colleague, Bill Kurdike, acknowledge that there's a problem with crime, so does every single member of the existing commission, so does every single candidate for commission. Sadly, my opponent doesn't believe that there's a crime, but now he does. He didn't have a plan before, but he has a plan today. You know, the only problem that I have is that he criticizes my program and says that it's all being already done. Well, I'm just glad that he finally recognizes that there's a crime problem, because the only problem he now has to face is his lack of credibility.
You know, 4 years ago, I was the first person to begin tracking crime. Ralph didn't even know that there was statistics out there. I didn't get them from the manager. I got them from the chief because I was interested in crime. And I've tracked crime every week for 4 years, and it's been going down. And now, one of the things that's, you know, if anybody is a victim of crime, of course we're all concerned about it. It could happen to me. It could happen to any of us. One crime is a crime too many. But look, there's no city safer in Florida than Coral Gables. We have almost no violence. All our crime comes in from outside. And let me tell you how difficult it is for the police. We have 191 police officers, the most in the history of Coral Gables. Because of a study that I asked the manager to do by the Matrix Group, we looked at the organization of this police department and found that it was well-staffed. I mean, good quality people, but poorly staffed for efficiency. We changed the hours from 10-hour shifts to 8-hour shifts. We changed the zones from 3 to 12, and we were able to put 13 more police officers out on the field. Look, we've always told we all have a role to play in fighting crime. The commission's job is to provide the resources to the chief, to the police department, and support them. The police department, their job is to come up with a strategy and execute it well and deploy force as well. And the most important one is the citizens. The citizens need to keep a watch out on their neighborhoods. They need to work with the police. They need to create crime watch meetings. And they need to go to court when we catch the bad guys. I went a month ago on a new program we had called the Judge Advocacy Program. I went with our attorney before the judge, following up on cases that have affected Coral Gables residents. And we said, we want you to have high bonds, and we want you to keep these, we're going to follow these cases because we want these guys to go to jail. And what happens is that on 2/3 of the cases, especially those involving taking something out of a car, our citizens refuse to go and cooperate with the police and the courts. And 1/3 of those under house burglaries. So citizens have to do a lot. We all have to do a lot. The police have the resources they need. Crime is down. I've given out statistics. They're FBI validated. We're always going to have crime, but we have to do everything we can working with our police, and we have a 10-point program, of which, yes, 5 that Ralph recognized are already being done. He has nothing new to offer. We have 5 extra that we're doing that is making the difference.
Gentlemen, you have some changes in the city administration leadership, the city manager position, the police chief position. Mr. Cabrera, tell us about your relationship with the city leadership at this time, and if you envision additional changes if elected in that city government.
Well, I'm very pleased to report that the city manager and I go back to high school. She and I were high school classmates, but not only were we high school classmates, we were student government officers together. And after high school and college, we were responsible for organizing our 10th, 20th, and 30th high school reunions. So I do have a lot of experience in working with her, but I also have experience in working with her 9 of the 12 years that I was a commissioner. She was director of development in our city. Actually, our offices, my business office and her office, were in the same building. So we got to interact quite a bit. I have the utmost respect for her. I'm just sorry that it took a very, very nasty, embarrassing process to bring her to Coral Gables. And I can tell you that if I had been on the commission in those days, we would have done everything possible to get Kathy Swanson-Rivenbark here instead of spent all the money that we did to go after someone that turned out to be one of the most embarrassing moments in our city's history. As far as the chief of police, I've known Ed Hudak for many years. I've known him since he was a sergeant. I can tell you that he is a cop's cop. I believe that a lot of people know him for that reason. He's very accessible. He's good for the men and women of the police department. He's good for the community. And I hope that as our city manager moves forward with that public safety assistant city manager position, which, by the way, that came from her. The politicians can't take credit for that. That's something that she took on herself because she recognized there was a problem. And that came from Kathy Swanson-Rivenbark, that public safety position. And so I think as she fills that position, I hope that they will all be able to work together and move our city forward.
We have a great city commission. We have a great staff. We have great workers. We have 800 workers. We recognize them every commission meeting, all our wonderful workers. Kathy's a wonderful person. We all know what she did here in Coral Gables. She was very successful in Hollywood. We voted for her 5-0. When we changed our strategy, our original strategy was to use Colin, I forget his last name, but the same guy that picked 94 city managers in Florida. It's the same company that the commission that Ralph was on hired to pick Pat Salerno. I know he hated Pat Salerno. If he had voted on the first round of that voting, Pat Salerno wouldn't have been our city manager, but he abstained, as he did on, he had 127 times he was absent without leave or didn't vote on issues that were critical. That was one of them. If he had voted, it would have been somebody else, probably the guy from Key Biscayne. But look, Kathy's a wonderful person. She's very well liked by the staff. She has a much better personality, I have to say, than Pat Salerno did, but she has her strengths, he had his strengths. He got us out of the economic problem. He was a financial genius. We all know everybody has strengths and weaknesses, but she's wonderful. I think Chief Hudak's done a wonderful job. Since he's been in, let me tell you what he's done with this 10-point plan that we're implementing. In the last month, we've had in the first week of the last month, we had 2 home burglaries out of 16,389 homes. The next week, only 2. The next week, only 2. Last week, only 1. We're averaging over the last 4 years 0.7 home burglaries. That's less than 1 a day in a city of 16,389 homes. And if you look at the cars, we have 42,000 cars. Of those that have something taken out of them, 95% have left something in the car with the door open. And of those, 44% of those cars are not Coral Gables residents. We have less than 1% chance in a year that somebody's going to take something out of your car, the 42,000 cars parked here. So I like our staff. We have a great staff. We're going to work together. We're going to move Coral Gables forward on those 97 initiatives that we're underway right now.
Gentlemen, we're out of time for the questions, but it is time for closing remarks. You each have 2 minutes to deliver closing remarks, and we're going to begin with Mayor Kaysen.
Think back 4 years ago. Do you think we're much better off today than we were then? In 2010, we were without reserves, millage rates were much higher, and our streets hadn't been paved for years. Our sidewalks were a disaster, and we hadn't replaced 3,000 trees that died over the years. Segovia, Ponce de Leon, Alhambra Circle, and Lejeune did not have the beautiful trees that are there now. The Biltmore owed us $5 million, and we hadn't yet begun serious pension reform. Crime was significantly higher than today, yet the city had not done the study to see whether the police were as efficient as they could be. We had controlled school choice. We didn't have a senior center. For 35 years, our downtown streetscape renewal was the subject of lots of talk but no action. We had a nasty brewing fight over a charter school unresolved. There were no 4th of July fireworks for lack of money. Squatters and derelict homes were beginning to appear. There was no driver's license office nearby. And 803 residents owed us $3.7 million in unpaid garbage and other fees. Now today, our reserves are the highest in the city's history. Not only do we have $37.4 million in unrestricted reserves, but the total number of reserves that we have is $133 million. That's from near bankruptcy 4 years ago to that amount today. Our millage rates have been lowered for 4 straight years. I'm going to do it for the 5th year. Our high-interest debt has all been refinanced at 2.4%. 92% is fixed, and we're using it for infrastructure projects. The Biltmore paid in full, and we will soon collect the unpaid garbage fees. We already got $1 million of that back. Crime is down, and we have that 10-point plan to fight it. We've made major pension reforms. The voters allowed us pickup parking, something that Ralph didn't want to allow them to do. We'll soon have our senior center and a renovated downtown, and the fireworks are back, and a DMV office exists, and squatters and derelict houses are a thing of the past. Our cultural institutions are flourishing. The new quality businesses are here, and housing prices are up. The charter school issue was resolved using my diplomatic skills. Clearly, we're in the midst of a renaissance, and with our finances squared away, we have a whole range of new options before us. Coral Gables is better than it has ever been. So all I ask is for 5 minutes of your vote, and I'll give you 2 more years of service. Thank you.
Commissioner Cabrera, you have the final word.
Thank you, Mr. Mendieta, for moderating this evening's forum, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your questions and your attention. You know, as this campaign cycle winds down to Election Day, 14 days from today, I have reflected on the qualities I believe you want from your mayor, and I've summarized them into key principles that I'd like to share with you. I believe you want a mayor who is practical and reality-oriented. I am a practical person and a problem solver. I'm someone who understands, or you need someone who understands and that needs are more important than wants. Someone who understands that he's not in office to be the city manager's best friend. I believe you want a mayor who's transparent in every possible way, who's always fiscally careful and financially responsible, who will ask the difficult questions on your behalf. And most importantly, I believe you want a mayor who will always lead instead of allowing himself to be led. Thanks to the Coral Gables Chamber of Commerce and the University of Miami for hosting tonight's forum. As you all know, the election's April 14th. Please vote. I encourage you to ask your friends to vote, your neighbors to vote, and I ask you humbly for your vote. And with that, I say good night and thank you, Coral Gables.
Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for the gentleman. Thank you very much. Thank you to the University of Miami, the organizers, for this wonderful evening. And remember to vote on Tuesday, April 14th. Have a wonderful evening. Drive safely.